Part 55. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 553. Because of Shiva's matter, Luo Guang did not lie down to rest immediately after coaxing Ashley to sleep, but waited for the matter to end. He felt his phone vibrate, and went to the balcony to answer the call from Chris. After listening to the other party's words, Luo Guang concluded, "So your mission failed." "Yes, we were fooled from the beginning." "How is the situation on your side? Is the biohazard there related to Arius?" Chris can only hope that the other party will provide him with a new clue as before. Unfortunately, Luo Guang is not a certain Doraemon, so he can't satisfy the other party's wishes. He told the situation reported by Shiva in a text message, "We found the logo of the beekeeper organization at the scene, and the virus used in this biohazard is just a regular T virus. I personally don't think it was framed by Arius." Unlike before, this time the enemy did not print the cartoon image of the bee on the car, but printed it on the makeup box of the participants. Chris trusted Luo Guang, but he wanted to get new clues so much that he confirmed again, "Is this true? The T virus is not difficult to obtain, and the logo of the beekeepers is not a secret. Could it be that Arius framed him? There are more than these two reasons." After Luo Guang knew that this matter might be related to the beekeepers, he asked Shiva to find the Cameroon police in charge of isolation to count the survivors. As a result, the police found that several children were separated in this incident. Without Luo Guang's order, Shiva went to check the zombie bodies at the scene with the police just in case. After she confirmed that there were no corpses of zombie children, she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and went back to tell the parents who lost their children this good news. However, after the situation calmed down, the police did not find a missing child in the mall. These children seemed to have evaporated from the face of the earth, leaving no clues. This was also a big deal, which made the police chief, who thought he had perfectly solved the crisis and successfully achieved political achievements, very angry. Shiva was also very anxious about this, but Luo Guang only knew that the beekeepers would take advantage of the chaos to abduct civilians when creating a biochemical crisis, so he could not provide her with any help. So the specific methods of the other party, where the missing children went, and other issues could only be investigated by the on-site agents, and Shiva and others could investigate by themselves. This is a common method used by the beekeepers, and it is also the real reason why Luo Guang determined that the biochemical crisis in the mall was not caused by Arius. Back to the conversation between Luo Guang and Chris. "I see. If there is nothing else, we will contact each other later." After listening to Luo Guang's explanation, Chris was a little depressed and shook his head at Pierce, who was waiting on the side. "Wait, you said the zombies we encountered this time seemed to have some intelligence?" Chris simply concluded, "Yes, although there are no witnesses, I think the zombies were the ones who drove us into the trap from beginning to end. It was also strange that we didn't make any sound in the cornfield but were besieged by zombies." Luo Guang asked, "Isn't it the Plaka parasite?" Chris has obtained definite evidence. "I dissected a body and found no parasites." Based on the current information, Luo Guang could not confirm the type of virus and said, "I know." "What are your plans next?" Now that the clues are completely interrupted, Chris has nothing to do, and naturally has no next plan. "We are free now. If there is nothing else, we will take a rest and return home." Luo Guang said, "In that case, why don't you help deal with the plantation? The nearest military and police in Cameroon will take some time to arrive, and our agents have only been on the road for a short time." Chris initially called the BSA hotline directly to report the biochemical crisis, so Luo Guang did not need to arrange it himself. His men would naturally handle the matter and simply send the situation to Luo Guang's mobile phone. Although the biochemical crisis in the plantation was not large in scale and was located in the suburbs, it would not affect too much, but Luo Guang still asked Chris and others to help just in case, to prevent any fish from slipping through the net. After Chris agreed to Luo Guang, He hung up the phone. Next, Chris and the others planned to use the car to play music to attract the zombies that might be hiding in the cornfield and kill them, while waiting for the arrival of the Cameroonian military. After Luo Guang ended the call, he did not return to the room, but called the duty room to confirm that Psy had sent people to confirm the type of zombies and clean up the source of the virus before returning to the bedroom. He leaned against the back of the bed, but did not lie down, thinking about Arius in his heart. Since the other party had successfully avoided tracking, why did he go to the trouble of using a trap to kill the CIA agent? Just to provoke the CIA? Whether it is good or bad, the other party has been able to achieve his career to this point, and he must understand that no matter how powerful he is, he can't beat the CIA supported by the lighthouse country. Luo Guang stroked Ashley's round and smooth buttocks while she was sleeping, and suddenly thought of a possibility. Chris had said before that Leon also had clues, so he went to East Slavia to investigate. From the intelligence sent to the Avengers network by Leon before he left, he knew the other party's general mission, which was to investigate the suspected presence of biological and chemical weapons on the battlefield in East Slavia. The East Slav government unilaterally stated that the rebels purchased and used biological and chemical weapons on the battlefield, while the rebels said that those biological and chemical weapons were dropped by the government forces. The two sides argued fiercely, but they were just talking words without providing any conclusive evidence. The CIA, based on some clues, speculated that Arius's biological and chemical weapons were sold to East Slavic countries, so Leon brought DSO people there to investigate. On the other hand, although both parties had no evidence, it was hard to ignore it, so the BSA European branch, at the invitation of the then president of East Slavia, prepared to send investigators to investigate the situation. Luo Guang thought that if the matter in East Slavia was related to Arius, would the enemy's purpose be to deliberately attract the attention of the CIA to achieve his true purpose? This conjecture is as groundless as duckweed, and there is no evidence to confirm it. He quickly rejected this speculation. The CIA had enough power to target both sides at the same time, so there was no basis for Arius to attack in the east. Luo Guang still lacks information and cannot figure out the true purpose of Arius. Thinking of this, he got up, covered Ashley with a quilt, and went to the study to start the computer. He had to use the intelligence network available to him to find more information related to Arius. Luo Guang downloaded Organization X's special software and then searched for the name Arius in the database. While he was looking at the other party's information, Simmons suddenly called. "Are you investigating Arius?" Since the other party asked this, Luo Guang, a well-known honest man, naturally would not hide it and replied, "That's right." Without waiting for further questioning, Luo Guang told Simmons about the cooperation between the CIA and Chris. Rightward arrow. The power of organization. Simmons directly issued an order, "Don't investigate this person's affairs anymore." Although the other party didn't say it explicitly, Luo Guang knew as soon as he heard this that the matter was related to Organization X. If it had been Luo Guang from the beginning, he would have responded with a knowing response, hung up the phone, exited the computer page obediently, and stopped looking at Arius information. But now that he has grown up, he naturally will not do this, and asked, "Does this matter have anything to do with us?" Simmons interrupted, "Since you have guessed it, there is no need to say more." He did not doubt Luo Guang's intentions. He only felt that the other party was very loyal to him and did not keep his words in his heart. Simmons softened his tone and said, "This matter has nothing to do with you. Knowing too much is not a good thing for you." Since Luo Guang's current authority is to check Arius information, he naturally also has the right to know what happened between organization. This time, the cooperation between organization. Since Simmons also answered his question in disguise, Luo Guang didn't bother to ask further questions. He pretended to be thinking about the problem for his boss and replied, "But Cameroon has reported the matter to our BSAT organization, we have to give an explanation, right?" Normally, it would be okay to just follow the situation at the scene, or if the murderer could not be found. He was tapping from the side, hoping to get more information from the other party. Of course, on the surface, he was just worried that the flood would wash away the Dragon King Temple and that he would accidentally ruin the organization's plan. If you confirm the type of biohazard virus that the CIA encountered, you will naturally know what to do. Then stay away from this matter. After saying that, Simmons hung up the phone. The BSA African branch has sent an investigation team to Chris, but the distance is a bit far, so Luo Guang won't be able to get the results of the virus types of the zombies on the plantation for a while. He put down his phone casually, and heard the sound of the door opening and footsteps behind him. Luo Guang turned around and asked, "Sorry, did I wake you up?" Ashley was wearing a lace suspender pajamas made of silk, and the allure of her body was looming. She shook her head and said, "No, I'm going to the bathroom. Do you want something to drink?" She noticed that the water glass on Luo Guang's table was empty. Luo Guang smiled slightly and replied, "Just give me a cup of hot water. He has no habit of drinking at night." Ashley nodded, took away the water glass on the table, yawned and walked to the bathroom. Luo Guang turned back and focused his gaze on the computer screen, closed Organization X's software, and entered text in a chat box. "Confirm that the computer is safe." "Already confirmed." The software automatically cleaned up all traces the moment it was closed, and I didn't find any remaining backdoors. However, for safety reasons, I have made an isolation box. Viewing it inside can avoid background monitoring. If the software of organization, the account level used by Luo Guang is not low. According to the permission description, there will be no backdoors, but he will not put the security of intelligence on the guarantee of others. The Red Emperor may have had more contact with him and was very cautious in doing things, so even if no problem was found, he was prepared to keep it secret. Luo Guang confirmed this before continuing to type on the keyboard and asked what he really wanted to ask. "Have the information been copied?" "It has been copied and organized. I will open the document for you." Luo Guang nodded. He had only acted for Simmons before. In fact, when he was reading the intelligence and talking to Simmons, Hong Huang had secretly copied the relevant information under the cover of his authority, and did not alert the X organization's network security department, which was on duty 24 hours a day. Luo Guangzi first looked at Arias' personal information. Arias is an outstanding graduate from a prestigious university and joined the CIA after graduation. Because the CIA had once carried out a phishing law enforcement mission to rectify black market biological weapons, Arias took this opportunity to obtain a lot of buyer information related to it. In 2000, Arias retired voluntarily and opened an agua drinking water company. Its main business scope is in Europe, America, and Africa. Therefore, he had contact with Elvin and became the downstream distributor of the former #1 biological weapons dealer. Arias saw the huge profits contained in biological weapons. When the Sanlian company fell, he immediately occupied the biological weapons market share left by Elvin. Using the buyer information obtained from the CIA before, he quickly became the current #1 biological weapons dealer. Judging from these contents, the other party is also a rare talent, but it's a pity that he has gone astray. Here Ashley came back and put a cup of slightly hot water on the table. She never peeked at the contents of the computer screen from beginning to end. "Thank you, go to bed first." "No need to wait for me." Luo Guang knew the other party's character and persuaded him. Ashley knew that her boyfriend preferred to slack off rather than work, so he must have important things that had nothing to do with PSA before he got up to deal with it personally. So she didn't say she would help deal with it, gave Luo Guang a kiss, and said, "Don't be busy too late, go to bed early." Luo Guang smiled and nodded, watching the other party go back to the room. He continued to check Arias's intelligence up and down, and found that it was all some basic information, and there was no content related to the other party's cooperation with the X organization. Luo Guang wondered if it was because the two parties had just cooperated, so there was no update. In this case, Simmons deliberately looked for him just because he was worried that his involvement would cause an accident. He stared at Aria's personal information, and suddenly thought that Simmons was worried that he would interfere and cause an accident, that is, Simmons and Aria's cooperation would lead to the occurrence of a biochemical crisis. Luo Guang immediately typed on the keyboard to tell Hong Huang that he had been closely monitoring the biochemical crisis incidents during this period. Since Simmons said that he would know what to do once he confirmed the type of virus, it means that the virus should not be the common T virus. So after confirming the virus situation in Chris's plantation, if the same biochemical crisis occurs again in the future, Luo Guang can use this to speculate whether it is related to Simmons' conspiracy. However, just when he was about to turn off the computer and go back to sleep with his beauty, Hong Huang sent him an urgent message. The Lighthouse Country and the Bear Country launched a joint military operation against the Eastern Slavic country. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 554. Time goes back to the day Chris came to the BSA Africa Division. On that day, Leon also took a plane to East Slavia with large and small bags of luggage. Accompanying him were two other DSO agents, Shen Mei and Bruce. In fact, in addition to the three of them, there was also a team of DSO agents participating in this mission. The two sides entered East Slavia separately in order to remain unobtrusive and prevent being taken over by the enemy. In addition, there is another point. The two sides are temporarily separated to conduct simultaneous investigations on the two forces in East Slavia. The current East Slavic state is in the same war as Pannonstein, but the nature of the war between the two is different. The war in this country is a civil war, a war in which oppressed people rise up against exploitation by the wealthy class and the government. This civil war has been going on for several years, but during the corporate chaos, both sides temporarily put aside their prejudices and stopped the civil war to work together to solve the domestic biochemical crisis. After the disaster, both sides ceased fighting based on the actual occupied territory, and both sides were recuperating and did not start another war. Some experts suggested that after the two sides jointly experience and resolve the biochemical crisis, they may be able to put aside their conflicts and allow East Slavia to achieve peace and take a new step. However, the good times did not last long. In order to earn foreign exchange to buy weapons and equipment, the economically backward and very poor rebels conducted mineral surveys while recuperating, and discovered a large amount of oil and rare minerals. The interests are so popular that people from the rebel army were bribed with money to become undercover agents of the government army and told the government army the news as soon as possible. This prompted Svetlana Belaikova, the first female president of the East Slavic Republic, to immediately send troops to fight the rebels again and stigmatize the rebels internationally to gain legitimacy for her first shot after the armistice. This caused the dark clouds of war to once again hang over the country. The airport where the three lions landed is located in the city of Holivgrad in East Slavia. But there is no sign of prosperity in this capital airport. The huge airport hall is the only one with their flight. It is not an exaggeration to describe it as depressed. Leon and the others were not in a hurry to leave the airport, and casually found a quiet and uninhabited place to reconfirm their next plan. Bruce looked at his cell phone and reported the situation to Captain Leon. The brothers from the other team also got off the plane. They have already met with the person in charge of foreign trade from the rebel army. The other team landed in a city controlled by the rebels, so they all spoke East Slavic. They dressed up as an inspection group from a commercial company and came here to talk about oil. Leon nodded and said, "I hope they move smoothly." Shen Mei asked, "Where did our investigation start?" Under the influence of Luo Guang, Bruce did not have a secret love affair with Fang Ling on the shower, so he is still single now. So before the captain could speak, The righteous Bruce enthusiastically introduced Chen Mei. Of course, starting from the capital, the city of Holofgrad is the focus of the two sides' competition. This is not only the capital of East Slavia, but also the city where the rebel army fired its first shot. Since the city of Holofgrad has important political significance, both sides have concentrated their efforts here to fight. The government forces had the equipment advantage, but the rebels had more numbers, and used the old city sewer system to build a huge tunnel network under the city to carry out guerrilla warfare. Before the armistice, the two sides fought evenly, but relatively speaking, the Z government army occupied a larger territory. Chen Mei replied, "Of course I know that we have to conduct an investigation in the capital. What I'm asking is, where should we start the investigation? Because the city of Holofgrad is the front line of the conflict between the two sides, and the intelligence obtained by the CIA is only that Arius, the death merchant, sold biological and chemical weapons to this country, it is not clear to which party the sales were made. That's why she asked which side's territory to go to first to collect information." Leon had already thought about this problem, and ignored Bruce, who looked at him with an embarrassed expression, and said, "Find the contact person first and then meet up. Do you all remember your identities? This contact is a CIA agent, codenamed Scarecrow, pseudonym Alex Kilpatrick. But the other party suddenly lost contact in the past few days. Now only the other party knows the specific situation in the country, so Leon and the others did not make a plan before coming and needed to find a local agent before making a decision." Bruce nodded directly and flicked the press pass on his chest to show that he had remembered it. And Chen Mei repeated it directly, "We are all a reporter team dispatched by Free Beacon TV. We came here to verify the rumors of biological and chemical weapons on the battlefield. The identity of journalists is relatively neutral. Now both the government army and the rebel army are in urgent need of proving the truth about biological and chemical weapons, so both sides must welcome the appearance of journalists." In their team of three, Chen Mei was the reporter. There was little controversy about this position and it was quickly decided. Next, there are two roles, photographer and assistant. Leon chose the role of assistant without saying a word. The reason is simple, he doesn't want to carry a camera weighing more than 10 kilograms around. Bruce naturally didn't want to carry such a heavy thing, but he couldn't beat Leon, and his status was suppressed by the opponent, so he could only accept the position of photographer with tears. All three of them have disguised themselves to a certain extent according to their roles. From the appearance, they are ordinary reporters from the lighthouse country. Moreover, the above-mentioned identities are all registered on the employee roster of Free Lighthouse TV and can withstand investigation. In fact, Leon originally planned to use reporters, photographers, and biochemical experts as a team. But in the end, considering that the identity of the biochemical expert was difficult to forge and verify without exposing Leon himself, he chose the assistant's identity, which was easier to forge and verify. Leon nodded and said, "Let's go." The missing agent lurking in the car entering the city had already been prepared and left a note for them. It seemed that the other party was still alive. After Leon confirmed the new address on the note, he started the car with the spare key and set off for his destination. On the way to the city of Holofgrad this time, Leon did not activate the vehicle killer skill, but just lost a little money. They walked through the checkpoint on the government side, but the people at the outpost asked them for entry fees. The local currency system basically collapsed, so Leon paid $10 before being allowed to enter the city of Holofgrad. This city has become desolate during the Civil War every year, and the walls can be seen everywhere full of bullet holes. But this is the capital after all, so they don't have unlimited attacks. Otherwise, whoever wins will have to find a way to deal with this mess. In addition, there are many civilians living in the city. It's not that they don't want to give up their homeland, but that the entire East Slavic country is at war, and they can only escape abroad if they want to stay away from the war. With all their wealth, even if they manage to escape abroad, they would only be able to live penniless. It would be better to just stay here and guard the little money they have left. But this war has been going on for so long that Shen Mei can't see any light in these people's eyes. The three of them arrived at the new meeting place, walked into an apartment, and knocked on the door 3 times rhythmically. After repeating the code 3 times, the wooden door behind the security door was opened. After the man let the 3 lions enter the room, he looked around to see if anyone was following him before closing the door and returning to the house. I'll tell you the situation first. If you have any questions, wait until I finish. Scarecrow Alex saw the 3 lions nodding before he began to explain the situation. The government forces have won several beautiful battles in the past few days, so the city is basically under the control of the government forces. Shen Mei thought about their mission. The rebels were no longer here, so how could they still investigate? I remember that the rebels basically relied on tunnels to deal with the enemy. Leon quickly thought of the key point. Does the so-called occupation by the government forces mean that the tunnel network has also been captured? It was too difficult to clear the tunnel network by a single soldier. He could not imagine that the government forces could clear it out in just a few days, unless the opponent used biochemical poison gas or biochemical weapons. Alex didn't blame the other party for interrupting. This was indeed the point. He didn't make it clear just now, so he just added, the underground passage has not been cleared yet. The government troops just drove the rebels underground. He continued to explain the situation. I went to the post-war scene several times to investigate, but the government forces cleaned up the battlefield, and I could not find any evidence related to biological and chemical weapons. In the end, I could only try to watch the scene, but... The bold agent shrugged, indicating that the visit was a failure. Seeing that the other party had no further words, Leon asked, you said the government troops cleaned up the battlefield. Bruce guessed what the other party was going to say as soon as he heard it, and said, if the rebel army used biological and chemical weapons, then the government army will definitely keep the evidence after winning the battle, and it is impossible to clean it up. Shen Mei followed the train of thought and said, if the government forces used biological and chemical weapons to win consecutive battles, then they clean up every battlefield just to cover up the facts. Alex nodded. He also thought of this and said, it's a pity that you guys came too late. If you had been here a few days earlier, you might have been able to find evidence. Leon said sorry. The other party waved his hand and said, you're kidding. If my communication equipment hadn't been accidentally damaged by a shell, you would have been able to grasp this information immediately. If he had not gone out to find food at that time, he would have been blown to pieces by the artillery shells along with the equipment. The place where Alex lives now is a backup base that he paid for himself. Fortunately, Alex confirmed the connection method with the headquarters a few days ago, so he was able to leave the new connection address on the car driven by Leon in advance. Leon asked, you have lived here for so long, is there anything we need to pay special attention to? Beware of civilians, beware of soldiers, beware of everyone but you. Alex continued to impart his experience and said, although you are a little late, but now the rebels have gone underground, at least the city has restored peace on the surface, but the government troops are still patrolling and searching for the rebels. I may use this to extort money from you. Shen Mei asked, if we encounter this situation, as reporters. Alex waved his hand to interrupt, it's useless. I suggest you either pay the money directly to prevent the disaster, or directly deal with the soldiers. Anyway, there is no surveillance here. He glanced at the beautiful Shen Mei again and changed his words, you'd better become uglier and hide your figure, otherwise you will have no choice but to kill those soldiers. There was no need to explain it clearly before the three of them understood. Bruce also said to Shen Mei, don't worry, I will protect you. Shen Mei ignored him and didn't say what her impression of Bruce was. She only wanted to make up for her mistake. She said, I will find a way. But if you are too ugly, you can't be a front-line reporter, right? You can't be too different from the photo on your press card. Leon made a decision directly, you can do it yourself. Next, Alex pulled out a large box from under the table behind him. As he opened the box, he said, I collected these things. See if you can use them. The only weapons are pistols, which are hidden. I'll go get them. There were no weapons in the box, but cosmetics, clothes, food, water, and other daily necessities. The weapons were hidden to deal with the inspection of the government army to prevent being mistaken for the rebels. Leon and the other two were not polite and went up to check the contents of the box. Shenmei looked at the makeup remover in the box and made up her mind to remove her makeup directly. Bruce secretly looked at her and confirmed that she was naturally beautiful. Even removing her makeup could not change the exquisiteness of her facial features. Shenmei felt Bruce's fixed gaze, and from this reaction she knew that the effect of removing makeup was not good. So she painted some blemishes on her face, which looked wrinkled and yellow. Then she changed her tight suit jacket into a larger size to cover her curvy figure. Bruce had time to peek at Shenmei because he was a photographer, carrying a camera weighing more than 10 kilograms on his shoulder, and no one would misunderstand his identity, so he didn't need to do any disguise. Leon pretended to be an assistant, so he didn't need to dress so formally, but he still changed into a more ordinary and loose jacket, which was used to cover the hidden pistol. When Alex took out the weapon, Leon asked, "This is what we fine-tuned according to your current dress. Do you think there is any problem?" Alex nodded. Although the three of them had just arrived here, they quickly grasped the dressing style here, and did not ignore the identity characteristics of their reporter interview team. No big deal. He put the box on the wooden table, opened it and said, "This is the weapon I rescued from the previous base. I have confirmed that it is okay." Leon and his team did not have much choice in weapons, because there was only one type of Glock pistol in the weapon box. However, there are multiple models of Glock pistols to choose from. After a little thought, Leon and Bruce both took the Glock 17 pistol. Shenmei chose the Glock 26 pistol, which is the smallest pistol in the box. The ammunition capacity is only 10 rounds, but it is suitable for her to hide on her body and her small hands. Although reporters should not carry weapons under normal circumstances to prevent misunderstandings, since the last time a reporter was robbed and killed in East Slavia, all reporters who came in to interview carried weapons. So even if they were discovered, it would not arouse suspicion of their identities. After making all the preparations, Leon asked Alex, "The next step is how to start the investigation. Do you have any suggestions?" Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 555. CIA agent Alex smiled and said, "I have made an appointment for you. Tomorrow morning at 9:30, I will take you directly to the presidential palace to interview President Svetlana Buraikova." He suddenly took out 3 exquisite invitations like a magic trick. Leon was surprised as if he received a gift. He took the invitation and distributed it to his subordinates, saying, "This is indeed a direction." Alex explained his plan to Leon and others. Now the city is controlled by the government army. If you get the other party's handwritten letter or permission, it will be much easier to investigate freely next. Leon lowered his head to think for a while, then raised his head and said, "But the other party may send someone to follow us." He meant that he and others would be monitored by people sent by the president, and in this case, there would not be much freedom. Alex was not a fool to survive here, and replied, "Of course I know this. The government army is likely to directly set up a fake scene, and then send someone to take you there, so as to prove that the rebels used biological and chemical weapons." "But this is not true," Shenmei suddenly said. She was very disgusted with this kind of thing that covered up the truth. Bruce also entered the working state, and did not act crazy about Shenmei. He said seriously, on the other hand, if we can prove that these biological weapons evidences were forged by the government army. Alex smiled and nodded. The other party had the same idea as him, saying, yes, if it can be proved that these biological weapons evidences are forged, then where the biological weapons at the scene came from will not be clear at a glance. Leon also followed the idea and said, this can indirectly prove that the government army bought biological weapons from Arius. It may not be possible to prove that Arius is related to the sale of biological weapons, but it is also a clue. Shenmei listened to everyone's words and suddenly realized that she was reckless and misunderstood Alex's meaning. Before she said sorry, Leon said, we will interview the president tomorrow, so we will take a break today and verify the interview. We may not have time to rest next time. According to his many years of experience, as long as the mission begins, no matter how simple the matter is, it will become complicated in the end. Alex had said all he needed to say, and said, you live next door, and everyone there has fled. Tonight, there was no sound of gunfire in the whole city. Leon and his team also conducted a drill to ensure some details of their reporter team's actions, and then they went to sleep in separate rooms. The next morning, everyone got up and opened a few cans to make breakfast, then washed and dressed up. Alex drove them to the central square in front of the presidential palace and said, I will continue to collect the latest news. Contact me after you are done. The communication facilities here were basically secretly destroyed by the government army. Because the government army is funded by the rich, they are rich and can directly use satellite communications or military communication equipment to maintain contact with the outside world. But the rebels can't do that. At that time, they were able to refute the accusations of the government army, and it was all thanks to the help of enthusiastic people. So this time, Leon and his team could only contact Alex with a walkie-talkie. The central square where they got off the car is an important barrier to guard the presidential palace, and a whole guard regiment is stationed here. President Birykova had already informed her subordinates that there would be a visit from a reporter, so after handing in their weapons, Leon and his team passed the checkpoint in the central square. The people at the checkpoint were used to seeing visitors carrying guns. After all, only a gun for self-defense here would make people feel at ease. Leon and his team did not hide and smuggle the pistols in. Because President Birykova needed their help, not only would she not harm them, but she would also do her best to protect them and escort them out of East Slavia. Under the guidance of the secretary, the three saw President Birykova, who looked like a strong woman. At the same time, Leon also saw a familiar figure from behind. President Birykova had a warm face. Although she looked very strong, she did not have much airs, and her smile was very friendly. She introduced Leon and his team. This is PSA investigator Ada Lee. This person was Ada Wang. Ada stood up and turned around. She wore small framed glasses on her face and had a short haircut that covered her face, which was cute. She also saw Leon walking at the back. Her eyes lit up, and she felt a little happy. Leon didn't think so, he would rather meet her on the sunny beach during the holidays. In any case, the two of them tacitly didn't recognize each other. Shenmei took the initiative to shake hands with the other party and said, my name is Li Mei, a special correspondent for the Free Beacon. Photographer Bruce Wayne. Bruce stretched out his left hand with a smile on his face. He was carrying a camera in his right hand. Ada politely shook the other party's hand and quickly pulled away. Shenmei, who was standing by, also felt the same way when she saw this scene. She did the same thing when she met the other party for the first time. She whispered to Bruce, stop drooling. Finally, it was Leon, who introduced himself as Assistant John Kennedy. Ada took the initiative to shake the other party's hand, and shook it hard before letting go. Except for Leon, no one noticed the little movement of Ada's hand. The two looked at each other and said nothing other than introducing themselves. but he felt that Ada's handshake made him feel at ease. After both sides introduced themselves, President Birykova said, "Please take a seat." Then she went straight to the point and said, "Both of you are here to verify the biological weapons. Why don't you act together? This way, our government can protect your safety." This just verified Alex's guess. Shen Mei answered fluently, "I have no problem on my side." Ada thought for a moment and said, "I have no problem on my side, but I hope to be able to investigate freely later." Before Leon came, she had talked to President Birykova once. The result of the communication between the two sides was not very good. Although Ada was a cute character, her character was not weak. When she faced President Birykova's accusation that the rebels used biological hazards, she insisted on hearing it and seeing it with her own eyes. From the beginning to the end, she said that she came to investigate with a neutral attitude and only looked at the evidence. For President Birykova, this was also within her expectations, so her next move was her real trump card to determine the outcome. Hearing Ada's words of impartiality, she replied, "No problem, Investigator Emma." After watching Shen Mei and others leave, President Birykova called her secretary. She did not doubt them, but she was cautious by nature and wanted to be at ease, so she planned to ask her secretary to confirm whether the information from the BSA investigators and TV reporters was true. According to President Birykova, the government forces responsible for protecting Leon and others will first take them to the place where the government forces and biological weapons fought. After arriving at the destination, the government forces disperse to guard the area, leaving only the captain leading the team to explain the situation on the scene to Ada and others. Shen Mei and Bruce did not ask Leon, the assistant, for instructions and immediately started filming after arranging things for him. Bruce, under the command of Shen Mei, began to film the situation of the entire battlefield. After he filmed the overall situation, Shen Mei was not in a hurry to explain the scene, but asked Bruce to point the camera at the captain of the government army who was talking non-stop beside him. She first asked the captain why he knew so much about the battle here, and then she knew that the other party was a survivor of the battle. This was a good breakthrough, so Shen Mei decided to dig deeper into the other party's words to see if she could confirm whether the other party was a real survivor. Ada did not wander around for the time being and was also listening to the interview. As for Leon, the assistant, he did not listen in. He was given a task to look around for things worth reporting. This was exactly what he wanted, and he immediately started to investigate the situation on the scene. He saw the government troops lying on the ground and those hideous biochemical monsters, and thought silently in his heart, "These lickers are bigger than what I have seen before, especially the exposed brains are bigger. Could they be a modified version of the T-virus?" Just when Shen Mei wanted to ask Leon if he had found the bodies of the rebels, gunshots were heard outside. The captain raised his weapon like a conditioned reflex and asked on the radio, "What happened?" "Captain, the rebels came out of the sewer," his men immediately reported the situation. "This is the rebels trying to destroy the evidence," according to the instructions of his superiors, the captain shouted and threw the blame on the rebels without saying a word. Shen Mei took on the responsibility of a new reporter, with an anxious look on her face, and asked nervously, "What should we do?" "Let's leave quickly." Leon put away his notebook and ran over to join them. Just then, he heard the captain of the government army hesitantly say, "This." He forgot what to do next when he was nervous. "What should we do?" "The gunshots are getting closer and closer." Leon also acted very anxious, in order to make the other party make a subconscious decision. The captain was shocked and remembered the next script, "We cover your retreat." After saying that, he immediately used the radio to order the rear guard to block the enemy. Leon felt that this cowardly guy didn't look like someone who could survive the claws of the liquor, and suspected that this was the president's self-directed and self-acted. He asked Bruce silently, but saw that the other party shook his head slightly. This is because Leon just confirmed the situation at the scene from a distance, and he didn't hear the captain's confession, so he had such doubts. The reason why this person survived the last battle was all due to the reverse attack. Under Shen Mei's questioning, the captain did not say that he fought back and defeated the enemy with courage, but rather that he attacked in the opposite direction, a tragic story of human tragedy. So this was the captain's true reaction. Help! There is a four-legged monster. Suddenly, such a sentence came from the captain's earphone. This made him stunned, because the script should not have such a terrifying creature. Shen Mei and the others did not wear earphones, so they did not know why the other party suddenly stopped. Only Leon and Aiden noticed something was wrong and drew their weapons at the same time. Before Shen Mei asked, the trembling captain of the government army ran away, shouting, "The rebels and monsters are coming together. Run!" This really did not seem like an act. However, Shen Mei and the others did not leave. Ada pretended not to know the identities of Leon and the others, and said, "Let's find a place to hide and see if we can use this to confirm the existence of biological weapons." Shen Mei looked back at the photographer and assistant, as if to confirm whether the two dared to take this risk. Bruce gritted his teeth and said, "I'm fine." Leon also said, "I'm fine too." "Then let's go make a big news." Shen Mei twisted her neck to look at Ada and said, "I'll trouble you." Aiden nodded. When she came to this area, the topographic map of this place had already appeared in her mind. Although many buildings collapsed due to the artillery fire, she had checked it again and soon took Leon and the others through the back door to a shop at a triangular position at the intersection. "It's really the rebels." Shen Mei felt a little unbelievable. "You know, the Pannenstein rebels have never used biological weapons even in difficult times for so many years. In the end, it was Wilson who bewitched the leader of the Pannenstein rebels and connected with the biological virus." Bruce pointed the camera at the street entrance. A government soldier was knocked to the ground by a licker and then his neck was wiped by a claw. Then the licker did not eat the defeated general, but immediately rushed to another soldier who wanted to escape after emptying the magazine. "Bruno, over there." Leon patted Bruce on the shoulder and pointed to the opposite shop. There was a man in a gray cloak in the shop, and there were two ordinary rebel soldiers around him. Bruce moved over and took a picture of this scene. However, the person hiding in the shop seemed to notice the reflection of the lens and looked over. Then the cloaked man raised his hand like a dead tree and pointed to where Leon and his men were hiding. A licker hiding in the shop rushed out and rushed straight to where they were. The two rebel soldiers also raised their guns and shot at their positions to cover the licker's charge. "We've been discovered," Ada immediately said. "Retreat." After saying that, she left without waiting for Leon and his men. Leon pulled Bruce away from the window, dodging the bullets, and did not leave anxiously. He asked, "Did you record this clip?" Bruce said, "It has been recorded." "Since the evidence has been collected," Leon said, "just take the data card, don't take the camera." "That's exactly what I want." Bruce was really worried that Leon would let him run away with the dignity of a photographer. Even if he ran at full speed, he couldn't outrun the licker, let alone carrying such a heavy machine. So he quickly finished filming, turned off the machine, and pulled out the data card. It was also possible to end filming and pull out the card directly, but Bruce was worried that the video file would be damaged, so he followed the most formal steps for safety. Shen Mei took advantage of this time to say to Leon, "The Psa guy ran too fast. Is he really a Psa guy?" This was different from the anti-biochemical fighter she had in mind. "No matter what, get ready to fight." Leon raised his gun and aimed at the window. Bruce's movements were already very fast, but the licker's speed was not slow either. This time was enough for the licker to rush over. The enemy's gunshots seemed to indicate that this point suddenly stopped. "The licker is coming." Meow, thank you for your subscription and votes, meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 556. Leon and his men were hiding on the second floor, and this height was no problem for the licker. The licker jumped lightly and broke into the room accurately through the window. Bruce had no time to cooperate with Leon to form a crossfire because he had to remove the data card. Shenmei was just a technician at the beginning and had not experienced much combat. She had only recently started antibiochemical training, so she had not thought of this without Lion's instructions. In the end, only Leon shot the licker in time and beat him so that he could not launch an attack in the first time. Bruce and Shenmei reacted and shot, killing the enemy before the licker successfully launched an attack. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow diamondsuit. The incident happened in just a few seconds, and Shenmei was already sweating profusely. If they were not careful, they would have been taken down by the licker at close range. Retreat, Leon led the team away and saw Ada guarding the back door. She said lightly, "You are too slow." Bruce originally wanted to question the other party for abandoning them and running away, but he saw the licker lying motionless at his feet. Shenmei quickly reacted and said, "Sorry. Let's go." This time, it was not only the lickers who attacked them, but also the rebel soldiers with weapons. They took advantage of the lickers to hold Leon and others back and surrounded them from both sides. One of them had already touched the alley entrance of the back door and raised his gun to shoot Ada, who was facing away from him. Leon saw the rebel soldiers leaning slightly sideways to aim, raised his weapon and fired 2 shots. When he saw the enemy fall to the ground, he pretended to be cool and said, "Watch out behind you." Ada smiled lightly. She did not make a counterattack because the other party raised his gun just now, and said, "Go this way." She turned and walked in the direction where the enemy fell. Bruce turned back and shot to stop the enemy. After Shenmei, who was the last to leave, patted his shoulder, he turned and left. After all, they were media people, so they naturally wouldn't carry too many magazines, so he took the weapon from the rebel soldier who was knocked down by Leon before, and took 2 magazines and stuffed them into his trouser pockets. Leon didn't care about playing the role of assistant now, and asked Ada directly, "What should we do next?" They came here by car, and the car keys were in the hands of the captain of the government army who escaped before. But the guy had already driven away, and Leon and his men could only rely on themselves to escape the attack of the rebels. "How about we tell the other party our identities first," Ada said jokingly, leading people into a shop, and then separated and used pillars as cover. When Leon saw the rebel soldiers chasing him, he immediately shouted, "We are reporters from the Free Beacon TV. Rebel soldiers, you hit the wrong person." However, the other party did not reply, and responded to them with more violent bullets. Ada, who was used to the situation, laughed and said, "It seems that the other party didn't want to communicate with us. What should we do then?" Shenmei didn't want to fight the rebels and make unnecessary sacrifices. Because these people reminded her of the rebels in Pannenstein. Ada asked back, "What else can we do? Deal with them and then go back to the presidential palace." No matter how legitimate the rebels' reasons were to resist the Z government, they lost their legitimacy in the international community the moment they used biological weapons. Bruce nodded. Since the other party used biological weapons, there was no need to say anything more. He extended the ACM assault rifle from the load-bearing column and fired at the outside of the store without aiming. Ada took this opportunity to stick one eye out to check the situation. And Leon ran to the back door to confirm the retreat, just like what Ada did before. "Reload," Bruce shouted. Before Shenmei and Ada could open fire to cover, gunshots were heard outside again. But to everyone's surprise, the bullets did not fly into the store. "I've confirmed that there are no enemies behind us, let's go." Leon had just confirmed that the back door was safe and came back to tell everyone to run. Ada said, "The gunshots are from the M60 heavy machine gun." Shenmei also heard it and said, "You said the government army's rescue is coming." She had paid attention to the weapons and equipment of the soldiers on both sides before. Both sides basically use AK series weapons, but the government army has also purchased a lot of heavy weapons and equipment from NATO as a supplement. This approach is actually not appropriate. From the perspective of logistics, the other party should purchase weapons and ammunition from the bear country. But President Barykova chose to get close to NATO to deal with the threat from the bear country. In order to curry favor with the bear country, she chose to import a large number of weapons and equipment from NATO. I don't know if the enemy retreated, the gunshots stopped soon. Excuse me, are the BSA investigators and TV reporters inside? Suddenly a voice came from outside the shop. Shen Mei felt that this voice was very familiar. It was the captain of the government army who escaped Arias. The man's voice now no longer trembled as before, and he looked very confident. But for people like Leon, no matter how tough the other party is, it is just a weak one. We are inside, Ada said so, but she did not act rashly and walk out of the bunker. Others did the same, watching cautiously. The other party walked in, allowing everyone to see his face clearly. He also knew that his behavior of leaving the other party and running away just now was not very good, so he laughed and explained, "It's great that you are okay. I just went to find the patrolling soldiers nearby to save you, and I didn't mean to leave you behind. You run away." She did not lie. President Barykova would not allow anything to happen to these people. If something happens to Leon and others, the captain will have to eat a peanut if he escapes. Leon and Ada looked at each other and said, "You are finally here, take us back quickly." Bruce threw the assault rifle and magazine behind the pillar and walked out with a scared look on his face. Inside the presidential palace, President Barykova is listening to the secretary's investigation report. There is no problem with the identity of the people in those 3 TV stations. Among them, reporter Li Mei has just joined the job. I don't know if she was squeezed out, but she was sent here on her first mission. The presidential secretary is very self-aware and knows that his country is not a good place to travel and is very dangerous. Naturally, no one will rush to investigate. President Barykova asked again, "Where are the other 2 people?" They joined the job a few months before the reporter, and there's nothing special about their resume. That's why we were sent here together. President Barykova sneered, understanding that these 3 people were marginal or unimportant figures on the TV station. They were sent to this dangerous place, and if something happened, it would not affect the work of the TV station. This was both good and bad for her. The good thing is that these people will definitely not let go of this opportunity to come forward, and will naturally do their best to investigate. The bad thing is that these people themselves cannot provide convincing and can only pray for the cameras to record useful evidence. Is there any problem with the identity of the BSA investigator? The 3 reporters had no problem. Next, President Barykova naturally wanted to ask about the BSA investigator. We asked the BSA European Division, and there is indeed such a person. But this person is also a new member of the BSA European Division, and this is her first mission. This information is not difficult to check, so the secretary quickly found out the results. It seems that the BSA regards us as a question for new recruits. President Barykova did not feel underestimated. There are only so many biohazards in the world, and the BSA organization must cherish every opportunity to train new people. The presidential secretary was not sure what the president meant by this, so he did not answer it. He turned to say, "In addition, there is news from the military. Our plan went wrong. Before our people were in place, the rebels attacked the reporters with biological and chemical weapons." The president thought for a moment and said, "This is a good thing. In this case, the things we prepared are no longer needed. Let's inform them to withdraw them." Yes, the secretary was leaving the room when someone knocked on the door. "Come in." A soldier passed by the secretary and walked in. "Report, the VIPs are all fine, we have brought them back." "Bring them in," President Barykova ordered. "Yes." The soldier withdrew and soon walked in with 4 disgraced men. "I'm sorry, there was something wrong with our security work that scared you all." President Belikova immediately changed her face and stood up to greet them. "It doesn't matter, we got a blessing in disguise and confirmed the existence of biological and chemical weapons." Ada waved her hand. Shenmei looked frightened and said, "This is too scary." President Belikova was about to comfort the other party when someone burst in a hurry. "Don't you know how to knock on the door?" She looked at the army commander who came in with disgust. The man didn't look like a commander except for the clothes on his body. He said quickly, "Sorry, but I have an emergency. The rebels launched a full-scale counterattack against us with a large number of biological and chemical weapons." President Belikova did not lose her cool, saying, "Let our people shrink the defense around the presidential palace. Leon and others have obtained evidence that the rebels have biological and chemical weapons, so naturally they will no longer question that this is an act by the president." Ada said, "Your Excellency President, I need to leave here immediately and go back to report the situation. I would also like you to record the next battle and send it to our BSAT." Then she turned to Shenmei and said, "In addition, I hope you can provide a video record captured by the camera." Shenmei agreed to Ada's request and expressed the hope to President Belikova that the other party would open the communication for them to send the video to the TV station. President Belikova has already prepared a communication network so that they can report the situation to the BSA branch or TV station as soon as possible. As for Ada's words, she quickly realized that the BSA investigator just wanted to leave here as soon as possible, so he didn't propose to send the data back over the internet. "I understand. I'll arrange someone right away." However, she did not object and directly agreed to their different requests, but the rebels are attacking now, so I hope you, investigator, can wait a moment. Although the rebels were launching a major counterattack, President Belikova still took some time to watch the video recorded by the camera with Shenmei and others. She actually didn't lie at first. Her troops did encounter an attack by the rebels' biological and chemical weapons. Most of his men could not keep calm when facing the fast and hideous lickers. They could only shoot randomly and pray to God in their hearts to let them hit the enemy. The rebels also knew that their use of biological weapons needed to be kept strictly confidential and no evidence could be left, otherwise the Paninston rebels would be a lesson for them. So they would only use liquors to fight when they had made a strict plan and were fully confident. Therefore, President Belikova could not find definite evidence to prove that the rebels used biological weapons. The rebels' offensive was very fierce, and she could not find evidence for a while. Seeing the government forces in other cities retreating step by step, she decided to fight back for her rule and also bought biological weapons. Only then did she succeed in winning battles and regaining the capital's ground while stabilizing other fronts. It's a pity that the generals under her were all useless. They made mistakes in the action of encircling and suppressing the rebel leader, allowing the enemy leader to escape successfully. This time, she took a risk and arranged her own biological weapons to attack investigators and reporters, and then rescued them by directing and acting. In fact, she wanted to forge evidence to prove the fact that the rebels used biological weapons. That's why the government rescue team that was waiting in the vicinity came so quickly. It's just that I don't know where the rebels got the news from, and they attacked BSA investigators and reporters with biological weapons to prove their use of biological weapons. After watching the video, President Belikova immediately asked someone to help Shenmei and others send the video to the TV station's mailbox. In fact, this mailbox was a disguised mailbox of the CIA, and the CIA agent who received the video forwarded it to the X organization as soon as possible. After getting the video, Simmons immediately contacted the Bear country to prepare for action, and at the same time notified all countries about the rebels' use of biological weapons, so that his next action would have a legitimate reason. The X organization parliament had already confirmed the plan, and the Bear country and the Lighthouse country had already reached an agreement, just waiting for a reason. However, after getting the video, they did not immediately launch the attack. The Bear Country is a neighbor of East Slavia. It has long deployed troops on the border in the name of protecting national security and can launch an attack on East Slavia at any time. But the Lighthouse Country is not like that. Every move of their army is watched by the world, so the army of the Lighthouse Country needs a certain amount of time to operate before it can reasonably appear near East Slavia. Therefore, even if the two countries have evidence and have discussed the division of interests in advance, they still did not launch an attack at the first time. The counterattack of the rebels lasted for a day before it ended, and the capital of East Slavia also slightly returned to peace. The day it ended was also the day when Chris and Pierce followed Arias out. Late at night, the Lighthouse Country and the Bear Country, which had made all preparations, issued a joint statement, stating that in order to protect the safety of East Slavic expatriates and combat biological and chemical crimes in their country, the armies of the two countries will conduct special joint military operations against East Slavia. By the time Luo Guang received this news through the Red Emperor, the joint forces of the Lighthouse Country and the Bear Country had already seized the oil wells and minerals in the rebels' territory, and were desperately loading and transporting the oil and rare minerals that the rebels had dug up in recent days. Meow, 2 updates today. Meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong. Meow. Chapter 557. After launching a major counterattack and striking hard at the government forces, the rebel soldiers did not reoccupy the surface of the city, but retreated into the tunnels, leaving the government forces, who were preparing biological and chemical weapons for counterattack, with nothing to show for it. Although the enemy retreated completely, President Birykova did not relax her vigilance in order to prevent the enemy from tackling the enemy's advance and retreat, and advance. She changed her army from the previous full occupation mode to the current key defense mode, and only let her men focus on protecting the key facilities in the city. Therefore, although the airport had been reoccupied, Ada could not leave immediately on the day the rebels' counterattack ended. She finally landed at the Romanian airport by plane on the first morning after the joint military operation of the Bear Country and the Lighthouse Country, walked into a cafe, and found the person she was meeting who was drinking coffee. The person she met didn't rush to ask the other party about what he gained from the trip. She pushed the menu of the cafe to him and asked, "Would you like something to drink? I'll treat you." I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow dot. No, this is the video data you want. Ada looked like she didn't want to stay here any longer. She took out 2 data cards and handed them to the other party, and continued, "The black one is the video I secretly took, and the red one is a copy of the video taken by the reporter of the Lighthouse Country." She looked like she was doing her job, but she always felt awkward in her heart. Having been a thief for so long, she was naturally not good at getting along with the police. Of course Leon was an exception. Reporter, the person she met took out the laptop given by her boyfriend and uploaded the contents of the card before keeping the 2 data cards close to her. She was a BSA member. Regarding the East Slavic country incident this time, they also chose to split into 3 groups. Ada attracted the president's attention, while the team she led and another team were secretly investigating the situation of the rebels and government forces. The meeting person just finished his mission and came here yesterday. Ada did not hide these things, because the other party also knew Leon. On the surface, he is a reporter, but in fact he is a DSO agent. Leon is also in this reporter team, serving as a little assistant, and I think his purpose is the same as ours. What's the conclusion? The meeting person just didn't check the information in the data card. Ada would not be stupid enough to lie about such an easily verified thing, and replied, "The rebels did use biological and chemical weapons. Before I left, the rebels also used this to fight a beautiful counterattack." After she explained the events of the past few days in detail, she turned and asked, "How is the situation on your side?" The meeting person glanced at the other party and did not hide it. "We also encountered DSO agents disguised as businessmen and rescued them. At first, she thought the other party was an ordinary business inspection team, but the other party's reaction after being ambushed and various tactical actions exposed their professional identity. Because both sides were aiming to investigate the biological weapons of East Slavia, DSO confessed his identity to her team after defeating the enemy and exchanged intelligence. The meeting person continued, "But unlike you, the biological weapons attack we encountered in the rebel territory is likely to be controlled by the government army." Ada thought for a moment and said, "Could it be that the rebels framed the government army? The rebel territory is different from the government territory, and the locals will not hide the whereabouts of the government army." The meeting person answered the question with a question: "Is it possible that the government army framed the rebels if your side is different?" It seems that there are new questions after the strip. Ada keenly noticed that the other party focused on the second half of the sentence: "You don't want me to go back and investigate it again, do you?" Although she is used to and has the ability to go deep into dangerous places and complete the mission, bullets have no eyes. Now that two major powers have joined the war, the situation has become too complicated. The person she met with smiled and said, "Who told you to come back so quickly? Why don't you take this opportunity to spend more time with your boyfriend?" Ada snorted and said, "He doesn't act alone, so how can he have time to accompany me? And you should be the one with the boyfriend, right? Don't let your boyfriend be snatched away by someone else, Jill." Yes, the person she met with was Jill. She drank a sip of coffee calmly, which was the flavor her boyfriend liked. "I believe him." Although she and Luo Guang work separately on two continents, her boyfriend always made time to accompany her. From this point of view, Luo Guang did keep his promise. Jill skipped the topic and said, "That Arias is an arms dealer, and it is possible that the other party has both." Ada clearly expressed her refusal: "I don't want to go back. There is chaos there now. Just think of it as going to help Leon. He doesn't know that the government army may also be involved in the sale of biological and chemical weapons. Aren't you afraid that he will be deceived by a bad woman?" Jill learned about Leon and Ada from Luo Guang. This bad woman was actually referring to Ada in the Raccoon City period. The other party was silent for a while, and then said, "You don't want to pay more? If you want to pay more, tell my boyfriend." Jill saw that the other party was wavering, and said calmly, "It's not easy to do good things, and it's not always profitable." Okay, Ada finally agreed to go back, and said, "But what name should I go back under?" "Let me think about it." After just 2 or 3 breaths, Jill said, "Let's use the evidence that the rebels also submitted the government army's use of biological and chemical weapons as an excuse. Although they were on an infiltration mission, they still brought battlefield recorders to collect evidence." Ada stared at Jill without replying, and confirmed that the other party was not joking, then said, "You are pushing me into the fire pit. You also know that the president is not a good person." The other party told her that President Birykova had once stood out from a group of tough guys and became an instructor of his special forces. He was also a killer. Birykova seemed to be talking to herself and Leon in a friendly manner, just to shape her image. Jill finished her coffee and said, "That's why she is called a bad woman. Then are you going?" Ada felt that the other party's tone was exactly the same as that of Luo Guang. She really didn't have much choice for Leon, and finally gritted her teeth and said, "Go. The most important thing is that she needs to use the BSAT organization to whitewash her identity so that she can plan for the future of herself and Leon." After Luo Guang received the intelligence about the joint action of the Bear Country and the Lighthouse Country in the middle of the night, his first reaction was that the action of the two countries was related to the X organization. Perhaps this is what the X organization asked Arias to do. After all, where there is oil, how can there be no mold? However, facing this latest news, Luo Guang did not anxiously deploy immediately, but patiently waited for Jill's call. After knowing that Leon went to East Slavia, he did not send his clone directly there, because he knew that the BSA European branch where Jill was located was invited by President Birykova to investigate the biological weapons in East Slavia. So he directly contacted Jill to ask for help. After all, reality is not a CG movie of Resident Evil, and the BSA organization will not sit idly by when it comes to matters related to biological weapons. What's more, the current BSA is more powerful than in the game, and can participate more actively in various Resident Evil-related affairs. Therefore, he handed this matter to Jill, and also asked Ada to assist her. It was not difficult to persuade Ada, because in addition to money, there was also a reward for helping to whitewash her identity. Luo Guang, I think both sides used biological weapons, Jill concluded after she finished her investigation results. Although it was impossible to prove that the government army and the rebels were not framing each other, she felt that both sides just did the same thing. Luo Guang asked directly, "What's the reason?" According to his understanding of the Resident Evil CG movie Curse, both sides did use biological weapons in this incident. President Birykova wanted to resolve the civil war and revitalize the country. The rebels wanted to defeat oppression and live better. Originally, he planned to find an informant to take the blame for him and tell these things when Jill could not investigate these. However, Jill can now guess the truth and provide certain evidence, and walk on the right path, so he doesn't have to waste his breath. The biological weapons used to attack the expedition team disguised as DSO were the biological soldiers of the Plaka parasite, while the biological weapons used to attack Leon and his team were the liquors. There is no liquor among the Plaka parasite monsters. Jill continued to speak out her speculation. You said that Arius, a biological weapons arms dealer, sold biological weapons to Eastern Slavia, but you didn't say that he only sold one type of biological weapons. Luo Guang agreed with the other party's statement. You make sense. Selling different types of biological weapons separately can also eat two meals better. For businessmen, it is not uncommon to eat the lower customer and then the upper customer, but it does not apply to the current situation. What's more, both parties need Arius and the Eastern Slavic government is not strong. So even if the strong female president knows that the other party sells biological weapons to her enemies, she can't threaten Arius who is abroad. Luo Guang continued, let's investigate and act according to this hypothesis now. Maybe we can let the government army and the rebel army fight each other and let them find evidence of each other's use of biological and chemical weapons. Jill nodded, then told her about asking Ada to go back to Eastern Slavia, and asked, do you think she will really go back? At first, when Luo Guang asked this international wanted criminal to help, she was also very skeptical. But her boyfriend recommended a beautiful woman to help her, so she had to take a look at the situation before she refused. But from the results, the other party's work performance was very good, but her suspicion could not be eliminated in a short time or just by this mission. So even if Ada promised to go back in person, Jill still had no idea. Yes, Luo Guang took a breath and added, if the other party is really determined to be with Leon. Ada has been alone for so many years to carry out various tasks. He didn't know whether she could change herself in a short time, so he couldn't make a conclusion. Jill wanted to consult Luo Guang, and asked, then I will make public the fact that the government army attacked us with biological weapons. What do you think? Luo Guang did not answer immediately. After thinking hard, he said, let's make it public. We BSA should seek truth from facts and stick to doing what we should do. Jill nodded. It is true that it is better for their BSA organization not to consider too many political things. She revealed a new piece of information. By the way, O'Brien is protesting to the United Nations against the Lighthouse Nation and the Bear Nation for sending troops to Eastern Slavia without notifying them, but he was rebuffed by the diplomats of the two countries. This is normal. Luo Guang did not find it strange. This was something that the Lighthouse Nation and the Bear Nation had planned long ago, just waiting to find evidence that the rebels had biological weapons, and then launch a large-scale attack. Although the BSA organization is dedicated to anti-biochemical crises, it has never stipulated that all biochemical crises must be solved by the BSA organization. So Luo Guang felt that O'Brien's protest would probably have no effect, but no matter what, O'Brien was right to speak out as the commander of the BSA organization. Next, the two confirmed the details of the next action, and Jill expressed his own views on why Luo Guang was not interested in AIDA, and finally ended the call. President Birykova was also surprised when she received the news that the Lighthouse Nation and the Bear Nation launched a joint action against her country. She originally thought that this would put the rebels in a desperate situation, and she could take advantage of the situation to unify the country in one fell swoop, but she didn't expect that it would put her country in big trouble. In her opinion, the two countries launched an aggressive war, and their target was the oil and rare mineral resources discovered in her country. But she was powerless to do anything about it, and even ordered the troops stationed in various places to stay in the city and not attack the Bear Country army that was heading straight for the rebels' territory. President Birykova didn't want to kill with a borrowed knife, letting the Bear Country and the Lighthouse Country eliminate the rebels, but she couldn't beat these two robbers. But she wouldn't surrender, and she was going to do two things next. One was to protest internationally. Although weak countries have no diplomacy, if they didn't say anything, no one would care about their own country. The second was to secretly contact the top leaders of the rebels. The East Slavic Uprising Army was composed of the people, and there was an elders meeting. In addition to the leader Ivan Jordanovic, there were also various chiefs. These chieftains were not all for freedom of action. Some of them wanted to take advantage of the war to reshuffle the power circle of East Slavia and take over. President Birykova's target was these people. She wanted to divide the rebels from within and complete the unification of the country as soon as possible. After confirming the next plan, she called the secretary and asked about the situation of these people. Where are the reporters now? Is there any movement? The TV station these reporters belonged to was from the Lighthouse Country, so it was not surprising that the videos released by the Lighthouse Country were shot by those free Lighthouse reporters, but the problem was that the speed of these two countries releasing videos was faster than the TV station. Of course, I asked those people, and the other party's answer was that they didn't know the specific reason, but the TV station didn't release the video in the first time because of the broadcast time. President Birykova said that she believed in the other party, but in fact she sent people to observe them secretly. The secretary replied, "They are still in the city and have not left their residence. Where is the middleman who made the connection? We can't find him, and we haven't found anything useful in his residence." President Birykova hid her doubts in her heart and nodded, "Keep monitoring them." Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Thanks to MaleProtagonist for the reward meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 558. Leon was not a rookie, and the agents in East Slavia were reorganized after Birykova came to power. They were more like special forces than agents. So he was always alert and easily found the agents on the government side, and told Bruce and Shen Mei about it. Google searched Can. Captain, although Alex prepared food for us for a week, it is not a solution for us to stay here all the time. Bruce yawned and walked out of the room at noon. Shen Mei, who was wiping her weapon on the side, complained, "You look lazy and have no persuasiveness or urgency at all." Bruce shouted in injustice, "It's not my fault. I was the last one on duty last night. They were worried that there would be another emergency and they were being monitored, so they took turns to rest to ensure that there was always someone on guard." Shen Mei wanted to get down to business, and said, "Since Bruce is awake, let's think about what to do next." Bruce was the first to express his opinion, saying, "Our mission is to investigate things related to Arius, but from the current situation, the biological and chemical weapons are in the hands of the buyers, and it is difficult for us to find evidence." He paused and said dissatisfiedly, "The CIA didn't take into account those of us who went deep into the hinterland. I think it's better for us to find a way to leave this country as soon as possible. They are all from the lighthouse country. If President Birykova gets angry with them, they can't beat so many soldiers." Shen Mei had encountered Major General Wilson abandoning his trapped comrades before, so she felt that this possibility was not small, and she couldn't help but start to wonder if they were abandoned by their superiors. When Leon heard this, he said, "It has already happened, so don't complain anymore. Now that the outside world has just stabilized, the president has sent people to monitor us again. But what we do next, we have to find a way to get rid of those monitors first." The other party had complained once that day about the sudden attack of the lighthouse country on the eastern Slavic country, so he didn't respond too much to the complaints. Bruce wiped his eye mucus, took a deep breath and said, "Did Alex contact us when I was sleeping?" Although Alex never came back, the two sides still kept in regular contact with each other using the intercom. Leon was responsible for contacting the other party and replied, he happened to encounter the rebels' counterattack during his investigation. Now it is 100% certain that these people used biological weapons. The rebels did this to force themselves into a dead end. But for them, they were already on a dead end. Since they had a fixed territory, they lost the advantage of guerrilla warfare and gradually showed a decline in frontal combat. It is better to buy and use biological weapons and fight to the death. Although this is true, the longer it can be concealed, the better. Its leader believes that the best result is to eliminate the government forces before the outside world intervenes because of biological weapons. So when the rebels received Arias's notification that Birykova was going to forge evidence of their use of biological weapons again, they took the initiative to attack and eliminate everyone, including reporters like Leon. So far, only the leader of the rebel army can control those biological weapons, so the cloaked man who was filmed at that time was actually Ivan Jordanevic himself. He had previously used biological weapons to attack government forces with perfect success, which made him feel that he could also wipe out the enemy this time, so naturally he did not make a backup plan. But he never expected that Leon and his people were professional anti-biological fighters, not actors hired by Birykova. The lickers he sent out returned in defeat, and when his personal guards tried to eliminate reporters and others hiding in the shops, they were disrupted by another government army. This made him finally accept the fact that his mission failed and truly exposed the fact that the rebel army used biological weapons. Ivan thought that the matter of biological weapons could no longer be concealed, so he made up his mind and launched a large-scale counterattack, trying to eliminate the pseudo-Z regime in one fell swoop. The previous article only mentioned that the rebel army retreated after hitting the government army hard, which was actually a helpless move. The presidential palace where Birykova was located was impregnable and guarded by a large number of soldiers, so the rebels could not quickly break through the presidential palace and drag Birykova out for trial. If the two sides continued to stalemate, they would only repeat the mistakes made by the rebels when they just occupied the territory. In addition, controlling a large number of lickers had already overwhelmed Ivan's body, so he had to retreat decisively. If things ended here, it would not be too bad. Even if the BSA organization came to investigate the situation, it would not be a big problem for the rebels. After all, the combined strength of all BSA branches was not as much as a drop in the bucket of their rebels. The problem was that he missed one thing this time, that is, the attraction of oil to the lighthouse country. He never expected that the small country of East Slavia would provoke two big countries. However, unlike President Birykova, Ivan did not succumb to the power of the two countries, but chose to fight to the end, causing a lot of trouble for the task forces of the two countries. Back to the conversation on Lion's side. Shen Mei remembered that another team of DSO agents should also be affected by the military actions of the two major countries, and asked, by the way, Did the people from Team B contact you this morning? Team B refers to the DSO team that pretended to be a business delegation. Yes, I was just about to mention them. Leon told the news. Team B was also attacked by biological weapons. The type of biological weapons they used was Plaka zombies, or enhanced soldiers. Although those zombies were dressed similarly to the rebels, they thought the attackers were from the government army. These zombies look like ordinary soldiers if you don't look closely, and they are more concealed, so they were purchased and used by President Birykova. The rebels also cherish the arrival of the expedition team very much. It is meaningless for the rebels who don't have refining technology to sell oil. So no matter whether there are conflicts among their internal people, they can't launch an attack on the expedition team, which is not in their own interests. So both DSO's Team B and Jill believe that the biological weapons that attacked them are likely to be from the government army. This morning, in addition to another team, Leon also received intelligence from Luo Guang. So before others asked, he mentioned the possibility that both forces in East Slavia had purchased biological weapons from Arias. If we can get rid of surveillance, the next investigation direction will be the opposite of the previous one. We will investigate the government forces, and Team B will investigate the rebels. This is the plan that Leon thought of after getting the latest intelligence this morning. Although Bruce said he wanted to withdraw before, he still agreed with the other party's plan after hearing this intelligence. He is a man with a strong sense of justice, but he would not have survived until now with just his passion, let alone become an agent. He said he wanted to leave before, not because he didn't want to take risks, but because he thought that withdrawal was the best option from a realistic perspective. Rightward arrow. Shen Mei on the other side asked, is Team B not affected? Leon shook his head and said, why not? But it's not a big problem. In a way, the actions of the two countries also damaged the interests of their commercial inspection team, and they have a common enemy with the rebels. That's why you said to let Team B investigate the rebels, Bruce suddenly realized. Because they have a common enemy, the rebels can easily relax their vigilance against Team B. Shen Mei was more delicate and said, but they are just an ordinary inspection team, and they have no ability to influence the decision of the two countries. Even if their interests are damaged, they can't say anything. Leon said, I just said that, just to buy time to stay in the area controlled by the rebels. They are also trying to find a way. Finally, he ended the stage of expressing their own ideas and said, okay, let's discuss how to avoid surveillance. When Alex's regular contact comes later, we can immediately discuss countermeasures and save time. When the East Slavic country was being squeezed by the two major countries, Arias was in a peaceful small country. The comprehensive national strength of this small country is only in the middle, but it has a beautiful environment and there are not too many annoying flies. His lover Sarah came out of the room next to him and said with a smile, Glenn, do you think my wedding dress looks good? Arias quickly stood up and came to the other party. After carefully appreciating the other party's beauty, he said, it's very beautiful and suits you very well. Sarah was very happy to hear this and decided, then I will choose this wedding dress on the wedding day. Okay, Arias smiled and nodded. When he wanted to say something, his cell phone rang at an inopportune time. Sarah was considerate and did not embarrass the other party. She said, you go and do your work. I will choose a bridesmaid dress for my good sister. Yet Arias watched the other party leave and answered the phone at the same time. You have completed your task well, Simmons' voice sounded from the phone. Arias put away his smile, and said with a little anger, but you didn't complete what you promised me. Simmons said disapprovingly, we trust your ability very much, so we never put you on the wanted list from beginning to end, and naturally we won't notify you of the lifting of the wanted list. Arias sneered, do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? I need you to announce to the public that you have not found any involvement in the sale of biological and chemical weapons. Simmons responded, our deal didn't mention these, you know. The two parties only made a verbal deal, and Arius agreed at the time to give his lover a stable and happy future. So he didn't back down, and said, "Then how about I publish the content of the transaction and let the world judge it? Threats are useless to me. The other party has a lover, which means he has a weak spot. Arius will not fight to the death with him for his lover." Simmons did not give in at all and said, "We will not release false information to deceive the public. The fact is that you are suspected of buying and selling biological weapons, and you have several biological weapons manufacturing plants hidden around the world." "I see, that's what you are thinking." Arius immediately understood what the other party meant. These greedy people wanted to get the biological weapons factory and everything related to it in his hands. So he was too lazy to say that the other party had no evidence or other nonsense. Simmons thought the other party was giving in, and took advantage of the victory to pursue, "Anyway, you won't need these anymore. Just relying on the drinking water company is enough for you to live a wealthy life, right?" Arius replied, "Do you think you can succeed in this empty-handed trick? No way." He held on to these biological weapons not because of money, but to give himself the ability to protect himself. As long as he still retains the ability to make biological weapons, he can create a biochemical crisis, so that the other party will not dare to act rashly against him. As a former CIA, he does not want to be abandoned after the mission is completed, so he will not agree to the other party's request no matter what. Simmons said, "It's up to you. Since you want us to give you an innocent identity, you'd better be innocent, otherwise don't think about us endorsing you. Anyway, I have told you the conditions, think about it carefully." After that, he hung up the phone. X organization has the ability to produce biological weapons, and Arius's factory is not necessary for it, so he doesn't care whether the other party hands over the biological factory. Anyway, he was just acting from beginning to end. What they, X organization, have to do next is to cross the river and destroy the bridge. After all, this kind of cooperation cannot leave the insider alive. What's wrong? Frowning, Sarah chose clothes for her friend Maria Gomez and returned to the room. Arius cheered up and said with a smile, "It's just some small business matters, which will not affect our wedding." Since the other party is unkind, he had to show him his methods. It was evening. There was no more talk about the political game. The protest of Eastern Slavia naturally did not play any role. The Lighthouse Country and the Bear Country were controlling the areas where oil and rare minerals were found and building temporary airports. Leon was packing up his equipment and preparing to go to find Alex. During the regular contact at noon, CIA agent Alex told them that he saw two trucks escorted by the rebels entering the city yesterday during the rebels' counterattack. Because there were rebels all around, he couldn't follow them immediately at that time, so he could only remember the direction and license plate number first. But God will not let down those who work hard. Alex finally found the two trucks in an underground parking lot this morning. The driver was missing, and the rear cargo compartment was still locked. He finally decided to take a risk and went forward to try to check what was in the cargo compartment. As a result, before Alex could open the door of the cargo compartment was bumped by a monster inside, which made him give up his previous plan immediately. Now the ground was controlled by the government army again, and he couldn't drive the car away secretly, so in the end he could only pry open an SUV in the parking lot and hide inside to monitor the two trucks. Because the rebels themselves did not have the ability to produce biological weapons, and the rebels were personally escorting them, after hearing this information, Leon suspected that the truck was loaded with biological weapons sold by Arius to the rebels. Although he didn't know why the rebels didn't take the goods in the truck away, Leon felt that he couldn't give up this opportunity and said he would go to Alex for help. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting me out. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 559. Although Leon is the one with the highest position among the three, His current identity is just an assistant, the least noticeable one among the three. On the other hand, the agents sent by President Birykova only monitored the periphery of the apartment and did not enter the apartment. This gave Leon and his team a lot of room for maneuver. Therefore, after several discussions, Leon decided to let Shen-Mei and Bruce stay in the apartment and pretend that all three of them were there, and he would go to meet Alex alone. It is easier for two people to play three people than one person to play three people to deceive the monitor, so the more people the better. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow dot. On the other hand, if you go to find Alex, the fewer people, the less likely they are to be exposed, so this personnel allocation is the best choice. After listening to Leon's plan, Alex did not question it, but helped him to improve the plan. He also provided a route for Leon to leave the apartment building from the basement of the apartment to avoid those surveillance. The wall between the basement of the apartment and the sewer system of the old city is 20 to 30 centimeters thick. It seems that it will be difficult to break through in a short time, unless it is directly blown up with explosives, but the noise is too loud. Fortunately, this is the underground escape passage that Alex prepared for himself before the Civil War, so he had already dug out most of the soil between the walls. Leon only needs to use a few more heavy hammers to break through the brick wall of the sewer. However, there is a problem here, that is, he may encounter people from the rebels. So Alex also specifically asked Leon to remember to bring his press card and bring the backpack under the garbage pile in the basement. Without the things in the bag, he dared not go head-to-head with those biochemical monsters. The time came to 11 o'clock in the evening. Most of the city was in darkness. It was not that the power was off, but no one dared to turn on the lights at night. Most civilians were afraid that the lights would attract robbers. Leon was very lucky not to encounter the rebels in the sewer. After bypassing the area where the government army focused on defense, he brought two men to the underground parking lot where Alex was. He cautiously confirmed that there was no one else in the underground parking lot before hiding in the car and successfully reuniting with Alex. Alex found them when the other party was checking the surroundings. Although there was no communication, he tacitly did not ask the three people to come over. He looked at Shen-Mei and Bruce, who opened the back door behind Leon, and asked, "What's the situation? Didn't you say you came here alone?" "The place where we live was bombed." Leon explained the change in the plan in one sentence, and the reason why Bruce and the others followed. Because the three were not in the house, no one knew what weapon was used to bomb them. Alex asked in surprise, "Was it done by the rebels? Or the government army?" Bruce replied, "The government army, but we don't know why the other party suddenly turned against us, but it doesn't matter. Except for them, he no longer believes in the two forces of the government army and the rebels." Shen-Mei had recovered from the disaster and said, "Fortunately, the captain asked us to help. Otherwise, we would have been promoted twice." Leon asked the two to help not because he noticed the enemy's killing intention, but because he wanted them to help cover the gap in the basement with a wardrobe and create an early warning device. This was to prevent the rebels from sneaking into the apartment building after seeing the gap. By the way, it was also to let Bruce and the others recognize a place so that they could escape immediately in case of an emergency. Leon continued to explain the situation at that time. Unexpectedly, they heard a loud explosion from where they lived just after they went out for a while. In this case, there was no time for them to save the things in the room. The three of them quickly came to the top of the elevator along the escape rope tied to the stairwell. The elevator in the apartment had been deliberately damaged by Alex a long time ago, and even the door could not be closed, so Leon and the other two only needed to open the maintenance door on the elevator to fall directly into the elevator. Coincidentally, when they just came out of the elevator and came to the entrance of the basement, they happened to meet the government troops who rushed in. The battle was imminent. Leon and the others barely considered anything. They raised their guns and shot before the other side raised their guns, seized the opportunity, and quickly dealt with the enemies who were caught off guard. Alex interrupted Leon's explanation and asked, "Wait, did you kill the government soldiers? You were not in the apartment at the time, how can you confirm that it was the other side? It is also possible that the patrolling government soldiers happened to encounter the rebels who attacked you, and saw that you were attacked, so they immediately went to rescue you." Leon and the other two were in a state of nervousness at the time, but they didn't think so much, but now they have come to their senses and found a lot of doubts. Bruce said the results of their analysis and said, "If it was the rebels who attacked us and the government troops came to rescue us, shouldn't they deal with the rebels first? But we didn't hear any gunshots the whole time." He took a breath, and Shen-Mei followed up, "And Birykova sent people to monitor us. It is impossible for her to watch the rebels sneak attack us. Unless these monitors received orders and deliberately did not take action to warn us." The lack of reaction from the monitors revealed something strange, which made Leon and the others certain that the government forces were hostile to them and others. Alex touched the beard on his chin. He was beaten anyway, and no matter how much he said, it would not help, so he went directly to the next topic. "I understand. By the way, have you contacted my superiors?" He knew that Leon carried a satellite phone for emergency contact, which did not require the support of local communication facilities. Leon shook his head and said, "There is no contact. The Lighthouse Country and the Furry Bear Country launched a war not long after they obtained the video evidence. This deployment of troops will take time, but no one informed us." He felt that contacting the CIA now would not change their current situation at all, apart from a few curse words to vent their anger. The land route is difficult to travel, and the air route is basically a dead end. Birykova will definitely not watch them board the plane and leave, so there is no hope for the CIA. In fact, the person Leon wanted to contact most was President Adam and asked him why he did this. But arguing with the president will not change the current crisis for himself and others, and may even make him and others really abandoned, because the best escape route is to take a ride with the troops of the Lighthouse Country here. So in the end, he endured it and did not contact Adam, focusing all his attention on the biological and chemical weapons here. No matter what happens, solving the biological crisis is the most important task of their DSO agents. Alex asked directly, "Then why don't you leave here? You are not the CIA, you can give up this mission at any time." He understood how the other party felt. He was not the one abandoned by the CIA. Unlike the Three Lions, the reason why he continued to work was to obtain important information so that the CIA could send people to rescue him. Leon said, "It's not easy to leave now. And the fight against biohazard cannot be smooth sailing. There will always be various accidents. We can't give up the mission when unexpected events occur. In addition to assisting the CIA, military training is also the main purpose of the DSO organization." Shen-Mei and Bruce both nodded and said that they stayed voluntarily. Leon continued, "You haven't run away, you are still persisting and finding new clues. We can't leave you alone and evacuate." If he didn't have any clues, he wouldn't force him to stay. Alex smiled and said, "I understand. How do you plan to solve the biohazard problem here now?" Leon replied, "The use of biological and chemical weapons by the rebels has been confirmed. The most important thing now is to confirm whether the government forces have used biological and chemical weapons. As long as we confirm these, the BSA organization will take action. In fact, it is not enough to confirm that the rebels used biological and chemical weapons. After all, they have not yet confirmed that the biological and chemical weapons used by the rebels were sold by Arias, just in case Team B wants to continue to stay in the rebel territory to confirm the rebels. There is no ability to produce biological and chemical weapons by oneself, and the three of them will confirm this here. As for what BSA would do, Luo Guang told him. BSA? How could they get involved? Alex did not receive this information. Leon said, "For the innocent people of East Slavia, This is the best way to solve the biological crisis. Although the interim government has invited people from the BSA to investigate the situation, it has not invited them to help deal with the biological and chemical weapons that have appeared in the country. So the BSA can't send a large force over. Alex understood what the other party meant, which meant that the BSA actually sent a small force to investigate. If they or the BSA discovered that the interim government also used biological and chemical weapons and announced it, then the BSA would not have to worry about sovereignty issues and could directly deal with the East Slavic issue. Next, after the two parties exchanged their views on the current situation, Leon took the backpack Alex decided to ask for from Bruce's hand and unzipped it. He had already checked the contents of the bag before, which were two AX-74U assault rifles and some bullet magazines. Seeing that the atmosphere seemed a bit depressing, Leon joked, "You have such a good thing, and you are only now willing to take it out." The other party said before that he had hidden weapons, but he only came out with some small pistols. Alex heard Leon complaining jokingly and said, "You reporters can't carry this kind of gun." He knew that the other party was just joking to liven up the atmosphere, and said, "Have you seen the cargo boxes? There are probably biological and chemical weapons inside." The car Alex was hiding in faced that door. Bruce said, "There can't be fewer monsters inside. Even if there are more of me and Shen Mei, we can't say that the problem can be solved 100%. But as long as these biological and chemical weapons are eliminated, these monsters will not kill wantonly on the battlefield." Alex said, with the assault rifle in hand, "At least we know something. The arms dealer has too few clues, and we can't let go of any clues." "I know, but can you do it?" Leon and the others were professionals, but Alex's professional training did not include fighting monsters. "How can a man say no?" Alex turned around, handed the assault rifle to Bruce, and said, "I leave this weapon to you. Come on, young man." The fact that he gave the weapon to Bruce but not Shen Mei was not gender discrimination, but the person holding the assault rifle had to face the main force of the biological monster. In the face of biological weapons, Bruce is obviously better than himself, but he is not afraid of death. Bruce did not refuse, took the weapon and checked it. Everyone chatted and distributed weapons and ammunition, but the rebels still did not come. Alex was used to lurking and was not anxious. He said, "Since you are here, I will rest first." He had not closed his eyes to sleep for a long time. Ada Wong came to the capital of East Slavia, Holofgrad, again. She did not go to Leon or President Birykova, but contacted the BSA team responsible for investigating the government army. This was also the news she received before she set off, which made her a little unhappy that Jill arranged for the Parker team to secretly come to the city to monitor her behavior. Although Jill once told her a plan, she did not adopt it. She was not so stupid as to fall into the trap and meet the president to say that she would investigate the use of biological weapons by the government army. Therefore, she planned to solve the problem at her own pace, and the first thing was to obtain intelligence after she left. The captain of this BSA team is Parker. If this task is completed beautifully, Jill intends to give up his position to him. They are a team of 4 people, all of whom are elite agents of the European branch of BSA. In fact, Parker and Leon and others took the same plane to the capital of East Slavia. However, Leon and his team took the cabin, while Parker and his team hid in the cargo hold. Because they were fully armed and did not prepare for an official visit like Leon and his 3 friends, they finally bypassed the checkpoints and sneaked into Holofgrad. The two sides met in a dilapidated house. Although Ada was unhappy about being secretly monitored, she did not say so, and asked directly, "Have you found anything these days?" Jill did not hide Ada's identity from Parker, so Parker was the only one in the team who knew Ada's true identity. But he did not understand why the minister would trust such a person. In addition, Jill did not let Parker monitor Ada, but just let them secretly investigate the biological and chemical weapons while the president's attention was on Ada. Parker kept his doubts in his heart and did not show them. He first talked about the current situation of the city, and then said, "We went to the construction bureau here and got the city sewer planning map of Holofgrad city over the years." Parker felt that the rebels could only hide biological weapons in underground areas if they wanted to hide them. As long as they could confirm the entrances and exits of the rebels' underground tunnels, they could easily monitor and confirm whether the rebels used biological weapons. Although his main task was to confirm the government army was in an advantageous position at the time and naturally did not need to use biological weapons. On the contrary, the rebels were likely to use them, so he would investigate the rebels first. As a result, he found a problem in the sewer planning map. That is, there are no dense underground passages built in multiple eras under the presidential palace and the square. From the planning map, it seems that the entire city has been hollowed out. Do you suspect that there is something underground? Ada has been to many underground research institutes, such as Umbrella's Paris Research Institute. That's right, Parker said, I've seen a lot of cases. Those people always like to build labs underground. Unlike the rebels, the government army has the possibility of independently developing biological weapons. And BSDA is different from Leon and others. They didn't come here to follow Arias' clues. Naturally, they won't rely on Arias for everything. They will think of more possibilities. Ada said, but the rebels are wandering in the underground tunnels now. It's impossible that they haven't found the secret research institute. The underground is the rebels' territory. She thinks the rebels will definitely try to dig a tunnel to the presidential palace and then kill the president there. We caught a government army's tongue when the rebels counterattacked. Parker said what he asked. The man who was on duty there said that the government army had heavy guards in the presidential palace and the underground of the central square, and they have never been breached. It's a pity that the man was just guarding the perimeter and didn't know the specific situation. If Ada hadn't come, they would have gone there today to confirm the situation, so he added, next, we are going to attack there at night to confirm the situation. Do you want to come? Ada didn't answer immediately, but after seriously considering the other party's invitation, she said, forget it, I'm used to acting alone. But she immediately said, do you need me to help you make some noise? Parker didn't refuse, and said, that would be the best. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 560. Finally someone is here. Bruce saw two shabby-looking people walking towards the two trucks, and immediately whispered to wake up the others. Leon suddenly opened his eyes, and under Bruce's gestures, he carefully poked his head out and whispered, be prepared for battle. Everyone nodded, carefully observing the situation outside, and did not act rashly. The two men were wearing ordinary clothes, and except for the ACM assault rifles in their hands and the handmade bullet belts on their backs, they did not have any symbols of soldiers. Needless to say, Leon and others saw that these people were soldiers of the rebels. One of the people wearing earrings said to his companion, buddy, the things entrusted to you by the leader. JD, stop talking buddy, who looked handsome, turned around and interrupted, I know that biological weapons are not good things, but I had no choice at the time. Now I am here just to deal with Birykova and end this damn war. JD, who was dressed very fashionably, looked at his good brother and said, but you also saw the end of the leader. He died, and turned into a zombie. He lowered his head as he spoke. This was not so easy to say. The leader Ivan turning into a zombie was just the beginning of the disaster for the rebels. Those lickers who were originally very obedient immediately became manic after losing their commander. They did not follow Ivan's orders before turning into a zombie and began to attack the people around them indiscriminately. The people around these lickers were all rebels, so they were the first to be attacked by the lickers. In addition, the tunnel environment was narrow and long and there was nowhere to escape, which caused heavy losses to the rebels. These people who kept biological weapons in captivity also reaped the fruits of their own labor. It was because of the chaos within the rebel army that Leon and others were so lucky not to meet the rebel army when they walked down the sewer. Buddy clenched his fists. He recalled the hellish scene at that time. The rebels underestimated the power of biological weapons, or overestimated themselves. But if he regretted it, neither he, nor Ivan, the leader who turned into a zombie, had this idea, because the situation of the rebel army left them no choice but to choose biological weapons as a means of fighting. Finally, Buddy's shoulders relaxed and he calmed down and said, "I understand what you mean. But if I don't do this, the brothers will be killed by monsters, and JD will be no exception at that time." Before the mutation, Ivan told Buddy about controlling the liquor on his deathbed and handed him the syringe hidden on his body. Facing the leader and friend who turned into a zombie, Buddy couldn't decisively shoot, and could only leave the leader's room like running away. But then he learned that the liquors suddenly rioted, so he had no choice but to inject the liquid in the syringe and give Ivan the last bullet afterwards. However, Buddy could not control the liquors immediately after the injection, which dealt a heavy blow to the rebels in the capital, but fortunately he successfully controlled all the liquors in the base before JD was killed by the liquors. Of course, the rebel soldiers attacked by the liquors also fought back, resulting in only more than 30 liquors that once numbered hundreds. In order to replenish combat power, Buddy brought JD here this time to control the new biochemical weapons sent by Arias. JD was a trendy person before the war. He didn't understand the political aspects. He only knew that his brother might follow the leader and become a zombie. For him, he didn't care about the country's affairs at all. He only cared about his brothers. "Of course I know these, but what about after the war? What will you do?" He has said it in a positive way, because even if he controls those biochemical weapons, it doesn't mean that their rebels can win the war. Buddy was stunned for a moment and said, "Other countries in the world will not tolerate the existence of biological weapons. I probably won't see that day." He knew his end long ago, but revenge was his motivation to stick to it. Buddy didn't want to say anything more. The most important thing now was to control the biological weapons in the car and then launch a general attack on the presidential palace. This was Ivan's last instruction. The war in Eastern Slavia could no longer be dragged on. Buddy closed his eyes and raised his hand to the truck compartment. He could clearly feel the liquors inside who became irritable because of hunger. Just as he was about to build a connection, there was a sound of a car door opening behind him. Buddy and DJ were startled. Just as they were about to raise their guns, they heard the other party shouting, "Put down your weapons." DJ looked at the other party's gun muzzle, not daring to act rashly, and whispered, "What should we do?" Buddy said, "It doesn't matter. I brought a few guards." As soon as the voice fell, there was a sound of metal water pipes colliding on both sides. That was the liquor. They had been hiding in the ceiling and waiting, so Leon and the others didn't find it at all. "Run," Buddy yelled at JD. "Damn it," Alex cursed and pulled the trigger. He and Shen Mei shot at Buddy and the other two, and hid behind the concrete pillar on their side. The car door could not stop the bullets from the ACM assault rifle. Leon and Bruce did not take the opportunity to shoot, but turned their guns left and right to aim at the attacking enemies. Buddy and JD did not shoot back. As rebels, they did not have bulletproof vests on them, and they did not want to take even the pistol bullets, so the first thing they did was to find the nearest shelter. However, no matter how fast a person runs, he can't be faster than a bullet. Buddy ran faster because of his modified body, but DJ was miserable. He was shot twice in the thigh and fell directly to the ground. Seeing this situation, Buddy was anxious and tried to control the liquors in the truck to get out and quickly deal with the enemy. The sound of gunfire came, and both Leon and Bruce met their opponents. Leon saw two liquors rushing towards him at a glance, but as the pioneer of killing liquors with a knife, he did not panic. While moving his position, He also shouted for Shen-mei to help Bruce. The reason why he moved his position was to let Alex and Bruce not have to look ahead and behind. The two lickers received the order to deal with the enemy, but Buddy did not give any further instructions, so they would only rely on their instincts to rush towards the enemy. Leon remained calm and focused his gun on the licker on the right. The 5.45mm bullet was used at a very fast rate of fire. Even if the licker tried to dodge, he would still lock the crosshairs firmly on the licker's head. He was too familiar with the licker's dodge method, so the licker on the right died before he could reach him. The licker was not slow, and they were not far away. Another licker had already rushed into his attack range and immediately jumped towards Leon. Leon was also familiar with this attack method. He immediately squatted to avoid the attack, staring at the licker flying over his head. With his ability, he could actually pull out a dagger and disembowel it, but the licker was not a tiger, and this kind of damage could not kill it at all. So he directly changed the bullets for the weapon in his hand. The whole set of movements was smooth and he could accurately insert the magazine into the gun without looking. Leon loaded his gun with his backhand, and fired 2 bursts at the licker's buttocks, attracting the enemy's hatred. It was only a matter of time before he could deal with the licker. Buddy failed to control the licker in the truck and broke through the cargo box in an emergency. Because his friend JD was in danger at this time, he was so upset that he couldn't concentrate on controlling the licker. So he wanted the licker he controlled before to come to protect him. The licker's foot speed would not be too slow, but the lickers in the base were now installing external armor for the decisive battle, so it was not easy to control them to leave suddenly. Now the companions in the base were also nervous after experiencing the previous events. If he didn't say it in advance, he was afraid that his companions would directly shoot and kill those lickers who moved around. So Buddy was also entangled for a while. Bruce and Shen-mei on the other side were not as relaxed as Leon. Bruce also moved his position and came to a place where Buddy and the others could not attack. He fired several shots in succession, not locking the head like Leon did, so he could only slow down the speed of the licker's charge. Suddenly, one of the lickers jumped to the side and hid in the bunker. Bruce didn't have time to be distracted, so he also ran and pounced forward. The lickers were blind, so the one who launched the attack followed the footsteps and directly crashed into the car. Bruce heard the dull collision sound, and saw that the car shook but did not get up. His plan was successful. So he lay on his side and aimed his gun at the licker on the other side of the car, holding down the trigger and successfully killing the licker. The other licker had circled back and confirmed Bruce's position by listening to the sound. "Don't get up," Shen-mei shouted, without stopping her hands. She, Bruce, and the licker stood in the same row in this order. Bruce's assault rifle had run out of bullets, and there was no time for him to reload or stand up, so he chose to trust his teammates, pulled out his pistol and raised it to his head, and immediately fired without aiming. Shen-mei raised her weapon, aimed and fired, just like she had been training, and her movements were very standard. The two of them fired almost at the same time, shooting at the licker who was only 4 or 5 meters away from Bruce. This distance was only a distance that the licker could cross in 1 or 2 seconds. It took the bullet hard, and although it was shot in the vitals, it still tried its best to kill its enemy. The two sides were not fighting knights, so Bruce would not be stupid enough to lie still and taste the licker's claws. He rolled on the ground and successfully avoided the attack. As soon as Bruce got out of the way, he and Shen-mei formed a crossfire. The seriously injured licker chose to temporarily avoid the edge and began to run away. Bruce emptied his pistol magazine and immediately reloaded his assault rifle, while chasing after the licker. He wanted to beat the leaky dog, otherwise it would be troublesome if the enemy recovered and attacked him and others. Shen-mei was a little anxious when she saw this situation, but it was too dangerous to leave Bruce alone, so she shouted to Leon and the two of them chased Bruce directly. When the others were fighting, Alex did not help the DSO agent, and with his strength, he would only make things worse. But he also had his own strengths, such as observing meticulously and being responsible for keeping an eye on Buddy and the others. Alex found that the uninjured rebel soldier's counterattack was not to kill him, but to save his companions. While he was hiding behind the bunker and holding his gun to prevent JD on the ground from moving, he was also thinking about countermeasures. They and others were not government troops. After all, they had no direct conflict of interest with the rebels, so at first they thought of asking the two men to surrender and then interrogate matters related to biological and chemical weapons. Alex came up with a plan and shouted loudly, "We are BSAT. Rebel soldiers, we don't have to fight to the death." Compared to Leon and their DSO organization, the BSAT organization is more famous and trustworthy, so he moved out of the BSAT name. Leon, who had just dealt with the lickers on his side, was hiding behind a bunker. Hearing these words, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and then he instantly understood what the other party meant. However, talking was about talking, and fighting was about fighting. He did not join in the conversation, but took this opportunity to touch the enemy's flank. Buddy never thought about the identity of the other party. He just thought that the government troops were following the truck and ambushed him and others here. But now he is no longer a normal person, and he is also a target of elimination by BSAT. And he still has hatred that needs to be settled, so he can't be arrested by the other party now. Although Buddy didn't answer, Alex knew there was something going on when he saw that the other party didn't continue to attack. He continued, "The one who fell to the ground is your companion, right? If we continue to fight like this, he may bleed to death or be hit by a stray bullet." At this time, the gunfire had basically stopped, and there was no movement from Bruce and Shenmei for the time being. "How do I know if you are lying to me?" Buddy looked at JD, who had no cover and was exposed to the enemy's gun but had not been hit. In fact, he actually hoped that the other party's identity was true. He only has hatred for President Belikova and the government troops under her rule, because his fiancée was killed by government troops. Buddy and his fiancée Elena were not rebels at the beginning of the Civil War, they were just teachers in an ordinary school. But the government forces attacked the school with artillery fire just because they suspected it was a rebel stronghold. As a result, his fiancée and the students were all killed in the artillery fire. It was this incident that made Buddy join the rebel army without hesitation, and under the contact of the leader Ivan, he became a freedom fighter against tyranny. Then, just as Buddy looked at JD, who fell to the ground and was struggling in his heart, he heard voices coming from the side. This startled him, and when he heard the sound, he looked over and saw someone throwing something over. He didn't catch the thing. He looked down and saw that it was an ID protective cover. Buddy put the gun on his waist with one hand and kept aiming at the location where the voice had just been heard, then he squatted down and picked up something on the ground. Special Consultant to the BSA North American Division, Leon S. Kennedy. He read out the information on the certificate. Then, Buddy asked with a puzzled look on his face, "Why is it from the North American branch? Is it also the European branch if you come here?" Alex didn't expect that Leon would actually take out his BSA ID, but he couldn't answer the other party's question, so he had to leave it to Leon to respond. Leon said, "Glenn Arias, have you heard of this name? He is a biological and chemical weapons arms dealer. We tracked him to this country, and we found out that your rebel army." His BSA certificate was obtained from Chris specifically in order to strengthen exchanges and cooperation between the DSO organization and the BSA organization. Leon did not finish his words, because talking further would only cause the negotiation between the two parties to break down. JD endured the severe pain and said in a weak tone, "Buddy, don't go on like this. He doesn't understand any big principles and joins the rebel army just to help his brothers." But JD was almost killed by lickers at that time. On the way to find Buddy, he also saw how much disaster those out-of-control lickers brought to his own people. Buddy looked at JD, who had little blood on his face, and shook his teeth. The most important thing now is to treat JD, so he stopped worrying about Lion's identity and said, I understand. Let's cease the war. Meow, I couldn't find JD's Chinese name. Meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 561. After tightening the tourniquet on JD's thigh, Shen Mei said to Buddy, fortunately, the bullet did not hit the artery, and the bleeding has finally stopped temporarily. But this is just an emergency treatment. If you want to cure it, you still have to find a professional, otherwise you have to amputate. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. After seeing the other party nod, she turned her head and looked at Bruce on the other side and said, do you need help? Bruce was tricked by the enemy when he was chasing the seriously injured Licker, and his arm was slightly injured. Fortunately, Shen Mei arrived in time, and the Licker died with the cooperation of the two. Bruce looked like a tough guy, bit the bandage with his teeth and tied a knot, and said, no, it's a minor injury. In fact, Leon mentioned helping him deal with the wound on his arm, but the other party refused and said that it was time to show his masculinity, so he didn't care about Bruce anymore. Buddy asked with concern, JD, how do you feel now? JD forced an ugly smile, not wanting the other party to worry, and said, sleepy, tired, and painful. But I feel much better. Buddy also smiled. JD was still in the mood to be funny, proving that the other party was in good physical condition. Shen Mei, who was checking Bruce's bandage, heard this and immediately turned around and said again, I'll say it again, you are not in a good condition now, and the bullet is still in your body. You must receive more appropriate medical assistance as soon as possible, otherwise he may need amputation. At that time, with JD's current physical condition, there was no time to dig out the bullet in her body. In addition, the four of Leon only had some basic medical supplies, so Shen Mei was thankful that she could stop the bleeding successfully. Buddy knew that the other party had tried his best and did not fool him. Although JD's injuries were caused by the other party, it was because he did not put down his weapon and tried to fight back at that time that the two sides fought. There is no point in distinguishing who is right and who is wrong now. So he replied, I know, but the medical conditions of the rebels are too poor. The medical drugs looted from hospitals and civilian houses have been used up now. The most important source of medical supplies for them in recent years is the simple first aid kits on the government soldiers. JD was a little scared when he heard about the amputation, but he still said stubbornly, can't you give me some hope? Shen Mei said, be realistic to survive. She felt that only by correctly understanding the current situation can we make the right choice. Bruce suddenly said, the presidential palace has sufficient medical equipment and even a small operating room. He saw the location of the presidential palace medical room when he went to the toilet. That place is now a den of dragons and tigers. Alex thought that the place Bruce mentioned was good, but with their current strength, they could not break into the presidential palace at all. He also specifically mentioned, our current identity has also been known by Birykova, and she has sent people to attack us, so don't think you can get in. Buddy's eyes flashed with a hint of hesitation, and finally decided to tell the plan of the rebels, it's not that there is no chance. Our rebels are preparing to attack the presidential palace and take down President Birykova. Leon and Alex looked at each other and said, do you have a chance of winning? Since they had spoken, Buddy revealed more about the rebels, including what the leader Ivan had done and what he did before he took over the rebels. The man named Arius you mentioned before sold us biological weapons. The only people who knew about this were the confidants who had fought with the former leader Ivan for many years, including Buddy but not JD. He continued, but we didn't keep any evidence of the transaction, so we can't help you in this regard. Alex sighed. This was not the first time. Arias was strict and left no loopholes at all. The anti-biological law does have pocket crimes, but it doesn't work for everyone. After all, those rich people hope that this law can protect themselves, not become a weapon against them. Although they have collected a lot of evidence, it is scattered. The CIA has no law enforcement power, and local law enforcement agencies abroad will not arrest the other party because of these evidences. Even if Arias really surrenders, judging from the current evidence, as long as the lawyer he hired is not a fool, the judge will not rule against him. Is your former leader the one who controls the biological weapons? Leon ignored Arias's affairs for now and asked directly, how did he do it? Yes, but he turned into a zombie and was knocked down by me. Although Buddy joined the rebels for revenge, he still respected Ivan very much. So his tone was a little low, and he continued to explain. He told me that he could control those monsters called lickers because he injected something called placa parasites. JD exclaimed, so you injected that worm into your body? He felt that this was too disgusting, but he didn't say it out loud. Leon and others were also surprised, but they were not surprised by the injection of insects, but by the type of biological weapons used by the other party. Shen Mei said, how dare you, the previous company chaos was caused by the placa parasite. If this matter was made public, even if the rebels won the final victory, the Eastern Slavic country would definitely be attacked by everyone. Bruce also thought of this, looked at the other party and said, the victory you have won in this way is also a castle in the air, and it will disappear at any time. In fact, it was Birykova who used biological weapons at the beginning. Buddy suddenly said, their biological weapons are not much different from those of ordinary soldiers. They can use various individual weapons, but they will not retreat even if they are slightly or seriously injured. We can only eliminate them by hitting their vital points. JD understood what the other party wanted to say and fell silent. Many brothers died in that battle. Buddy broke the brief silence and said, in this situation, no matter how many people we have, even if we hide in the tunnel, we can't stop the advancement of the enemy's biological weapons. Leon said the result, so you also used biological weapons. Buddy and JD nodded silently. Alas, Shen Mei said, there is no justice in this war, just like Pannenstein. Leon glanced at Shen Mei and asked a question, after your former leader got into trouble, those lickers did not die, but went crazy. When he said this, Bruce and Shen Mei reacted. During the company turmoil, after Wesker was defeated by Luo Guang, most of the placa monsters in the world lost their lives and lay flat, without going crazy at all. Otherwise, Luo Guang would not be hailed as the savior of the world. Buddy replied, yes, is there any problem with this? Leon nodded and said, yes, this shows that the placa parasite has been repeated again. He had thought about temporarily ignoring the task of finding clues about Arias and focusing on solving the problem of East Slavs. As a result, the slap in the face came so quickly. Arias was the one who could not be ignored temporarily and needed to be bitten to death. But now he can't do anything about it, so he should focus on solving the things he can help with first. Thinking of this, Leon sent a message to Luo Guang. He believed that the other party knew how to do it. Alex interrupted the topic and said, now is not the time to discuss these. JD needs help, and the liquor in the carriage also needs to be dealt with. We still have a lot of things to do. As soon as he finished speaking, Leon received a reply from Luo Guang, which only had the word no. Leon looked at the other party and said, the rebels are going to attack the government army. This matter has nothing to do with ARBSA, but I want to take this opportunity to investigate the use of biological weapons by the government army. He believed that Birykova would definitely use biological weapons in the face of the rebels who were out in full force. Alex's eyes lit up. This was indeed a good method, and it could also get himself and others out. Leon turned his head and said to Buddy, can I trust you? Buddy asked back, what do you want me to do? Use these biological weapons to solve the problem of biological weapons. Leon paused and said, and destroy these biological weapons after the battle. Alex and others looked at Leon. Buddy said in disbelief, don't you want to destroy all biological weapons? That's what he said, but he didn't doubt Lion's identity because of this. It's just a special matter. Leon was thinking about how to deal with these biological weapons after the ceasefire. According to his real thoughts and BSA's practices, he should let Buddy directly control these biological weapons and hang himself. This is the safest way to destroy biological and chemical weapons. But there is no need to think too much. The other party will definitely not agree to this plan, and the two sides are likely to clash again. Perhaps some people say that if the rebels use biological and chemical weapons, it will also be a disaster for the soldiers of the government army. But according to Buddy, he does not need any remote control to control those liquors. As long as he thinks in his brain, he can control them. In this case, Leon can only sneak attack to solve Buddy and the other two, because they have no way to keep Buddy asleep. After Buddy's death, those liquors will still slaughter at the rebel base, which is not a good thing, just like slaughtering government troops. There is no difference in the importance of the lives of soldiers on both sides. It was Shen Mei's words that reminded him that this war was no longer just, and the best choice was to let the biological and chemical weapons of both sides perish together. Holivgrad City Presidential Palace. President Birykova received a message from Arias a few hours ago. Those people from the Free Beacon TV were not real media people, but CIA agents of the Beacon country. The reason why Arias told Birykova this information was naturally to tell Simmons that he was not easy to mess with, and he chose to cooperate not because he was afraid of the Lighthouse Nation. The Lighthouse Nation is indeed very powerful, but not all countries in the world have to look at the Lighthouse Nation's face. After changing his name, he has plenty of ways to live a stable life with his lover. President Birykova was naturally furious when she heard the news. She did everything for this country, but she was fooled by the Lighthouse Nation and the Bear Nation and took the peach. But after her anger, she quickly regained her composure. She wanted to send people to eliminate the enemy agents hidden in her country. President Birykova did this not to vent her anger. She planned to blame the rebels for this matter, and then said that she and others discovered their CIA identities when they were rescuing them. In the end, she naturally used this reason as an excuse to deny the images taken by Bruce, and pushed the use of biological and chemical weapons by the rebels on the Lighthouse Nation and the Bear Nation. In this way, the two armies of justice wreaking havoc in their own country will become nameless. The other side may not retreat, but President Birykova now has only this one possible method. The Bear Country and the Lighthouse Country have invaded the country and are plundering her national resources all the time. Time is tight, so she did not let her people change clothes and quickly issued orders. Anyway, under her first attack, Birykova did not think that these agents could survive. However, the facts slapped her in the face. President Birykova forgot what kind of waste her generals were. Under normal circumstances, the soldiers should be in position outside the door of Lion's apartment, and then let the teammates on the opposite side of the balcony launch a surprise attack with various weapons. After a round of firepower, the soldiers outside the door can immediately rush in to clean up the mess. But the general in charge gave his men only a simple instruction: use a rocket launcher to sneak attack, and then let the soldiers go up to collect the bodies. So the soldiers below fired a round of rocket launchers before rushing into the apartment from outside, just in time to run into Leon and his group. The game that was sure to win was lost again, and President Birykova, who heard that Leon and his group had escaped, crushed a ceramic cup directly. Despite this, she did not give up struggling. President Birykova successfully contacted President Adam through some means, threatening that if they did not withdraw their troops, she would announce that the Lighthouse Country deliberately created disputes to start a war. President Adam did not say anything. He was also angry. He had no idea about the conspiracy of the X organization. Now that the incident has happened, as the president of the lighthouse country, he can't come out and say that this is a good thing done by their military on their own initiative, right? This is too embarrassing. In the end, President Adam did not promise anything, but just said that he could not decide alone and needed to communicate with all parties. He was thinking about whether he could take this opportunity to attack Simmons to ensure and consolidate his position as president. Buddy returned to the underground base of the rebels with more lickers. Now he has replaced Yvonne as the leader of the rebels. His friend came over. The man looked at the dense lickers crawling all over the underground tunnel behind him with lingering fear, and couldn't help shuddering and asked, "Buddy, where is JD? I sent him to carry out the mission." "Dick, have we finished counting the losses? And how is the transformation progress of the lickers?" Buddy had established his leadership position before leaving the base with JD. Because the top leaders of the rebels were all wiped out, and the other side could control those biochemical monsters, naturally no one jumped out to compete for the leadership of the rebels. In addition, he lied that JD's condition was not suitable for the mission, and now he even had problems walking. He didn't know much medical knowledge, and JD didn't want to hold the liquor. In the end, Leon and his team made a simple stretcher and took DJ to a building near the square where they could observe the square. They were ready to wait there for the rebels to launch a general attack. Leon didn't say that this was to take DJ as a hostage, and Buddy didn't worry about it. Because Buddy trusts Psa, and he has made plans. If he can survive this general attack, he will clean up those liquors himself and then give himself a bullet. Now he hopes that JD can survive and witness the final end of East Slavia for him. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 562. Dick, a soldier of the rebel army, immediately began to report the situation after hearing Buddy's question. "It's just tying the gray-black cloth on those monsters. It's not difficult." Although everyone was a little nervous at the beginning, the lickers didn't mess around later, so it was done quickly. These lickers were covered in blood, which was still somewhat obvious at night, so this was done to increase concealment and make these lickers more difficult to be discovered. In addition, their rebel army was not professional after all, so there was a lot of redundant information in Dick's report. Then he talked about the casualties, except for the leader and them, the other casualties. I'll be frank. There are only about 3,000 brothers who can participate in the battle. For the current capital rebel army, it is better to answer directly what is left instead of what has been lost. It was also the first time that Buddy knew how many soldiers were left in his rebel army, and this number was less than he remembered. Originally, the capital's rebel army had tens of thousands of people at the beginning, but due to the losses in recent years and several major defeats, it is difficult to replenish troops now, so it is normal that the combat personnel are much less than before, but he did not expect that there are only 3,000 soldiers left. The situation on the government side is not much better. Using the compulsory conscription law, Birykova deployed more than 3 times the number of troops in the city as the rebel army. They are better equipped and have many armored vehicles, but the training level is uneven. Although the difference in the number of people on both sides is not small, Buddy feels that he still has a chance of winning. As long as the lickers he controls can get close to the enemy, they can bring chaos to the enemy, and then he and others can take this opportunity to defeat the enemy. He kept thinking about countermeasures in his mind, and said at the same time, "You should also transform these lickers." Of course, Buddy thought so, and he didn't know the specific actual effect, but since it was a decisive battle, he naturally had to use all the means he could use. Burning the boats and breaking the cauldrons is the most suitable way to describe the current rebels. I see the rebels didn't have any military salutes or other etiquette, so Dick turned around and left immediately after he finished speaking. "Wait, You can also notify the captains to go to the conference room to wait for me to arrange the tasks. Yestik didn't look back, and went back with the liquors, looking nervous. Soon the captains of the various teams responsible for the battle came to the conference room. They didn't chat while waiting for Buddy, and the atmosphere was very solemn. Obviously, they were prepared for a big move next. The sudden death of leader Ivan and other senior officials dealt a great blow to the morale of the rebels. It was normal for Buddy to need a big victory to stabilize the army and his position. At this time, Buddy was giving the rebels in other parts of East Slavia the orders that Ivan had given before his death. The first was to suspend the harassment of the armies of the Lighthouse Country and the Bear Country, and shrink the defense line to prevent the government army from taking advantage of the opportunity. The second point was to send a small force to harass the government army and attract the enemy's attention. After notifying all regions, Buddy went to the conference room. If anyone has any objections to my leadership, they can raise it now. Anyone who has doubts about this mission or does not want to participate can raise it now. Buddy glanced at everyone in the conference room and did not stop talking, but after the mission begins, I will not allow anyone to retreat, because this will be a decisive battle that determines the future of the East Slavic country. After that, he stopped talking and waited for everyone's response. The conference room was still silent. Suddenly, a 1.6-meter dwarf raised his hand, stood up and asked, "I have a question. Do we need a decisive battle now? Or do we have the conditions?" Buddy replied, "If we don't fight now, our chances will become slimmer and slimmer later." According to Ivan's original plan, their previous counterattack would divide and surround the enemy and cause heavy damage to the government army. The rebels could also take the opportunity to receive the latest batch of liquors and then directly fight a decisive battle. But Ivan is already very old, and his body can no longer support and control so many liquors. In the end, in order to preserve the results of the counterattack, he temporarily changed the plan. Buddy explained the plight of the rebels to the person who raised the question or to everyone present. Although there are still many civilians in the city, after so many years, they will not suddenly join us no matter what. What he meant was that his own rebels in the capital had no soldiers to earn, and to be honest, the rebels outside were in a similar situation. Of course, they can recruit new soldiers in the territory they have conquered and controlled, but it is not easy to send them to the capital now, and the number of people on the government side will not remain unchanged. If we, the rebels in the capital, don't fight hard, there are only two ways. Either retreat back to the base and confront the president, but in the absence of vehicles, we are likely to suffer heavy losses and lose the opportunity to overthrow the pseudo-government forever. President Birykova did not leave the capital for the sake of her own legitimacy and to encourage the government army to continue fighting. This approach has more political significance than practical significance, but it also became a prerequisite for Ivan to decide to launch a general offensive. Buddy suggested another way. The second way is to fight to the death with those biological soldiers that are constantly produced, and be slowly worn down by the government army. This situation will also be seen in other rebel territories, and we can't avoid it. In fact, there is another way, and that is to surrender, but this must never be said. Finally, he answered another question from the other party. As for the conditions for the decisive battle, the conditions for our rebel army have not been easy from the beginning to now, right? Now our oil and rare minerals are controlled by foreign forces, and we no longer have any funds to buy new biological weapons. When the person who raised his hand to ask heard this, he said he had no doubts and sat down. Others also nodded. The conditions will only get worse in the future. Now may be the best time. Buddy picked up the baton and said, "I will now explain the tasks of each team in this decisive battle. In general, we need to divide our troops into 3 groups. The conditions here are not good, so naturally you have to be more cautious instead of hitting the stone with eggs, so you must make a plan." Everyone cheered up and looked at the map of Holofgrad city behind Buddy. Since Belikova, who is greedy for life and is afraid of death, has asked the troops to build a protective circle around her presidential palace, then we will use a few points to attack one direction of the enemy's presidential palace. But the captain in charge must remember that we are all here. It's just a feint attack at first, and the main thing is to preserve your own strength, because later you may use the feint attack as your main attack. Buddy placed the largest number of red blackboard tiles on the map at the square behind the presidential palace. It is true that the government troops have an absolute advantage in strength, but they have too many places to defend, and their troops are naturally scattered, so the opponent's numbers do not have an advantage in a short battle. Buddy felt that Belikova would never have expected that the rebels who had been fighting guerrillas would suddenly seek a decisive battle and behead themselves. The contents of the decisive battle plan were all his own thoughts and were not explained by Ivan. However, people in the audience mistakenly thought that these contents were still plans arranged by Ivan before his death. Buddy paused and continued, "If the enemy directly concentrates the troops surrounding the presidential palace on the same side, then I will lead the lickers to attack from the side. As long as there is chaos in the enemy's front, you will launch the general attack." When the second surprise attack force led by him was replaced with a single blue blackboard tile and placed in the other direction of the presidential palace. The last force is the guerrilla force. I need to use the fewest people to hold back the most enemy support, and hold back those enemies who are returning from key protection facilities. He scattered several green blackboard stickers at key facilities and the presidential palace. On the only way between. As soon as Buddy finished speaking, someone raised questions. Their rebel army will not hold a single talk, just like Ivan is still doing. Their combat meetings will have more intense discussions, and everyone will express their own suggestions. Then what if the enemy takes the initiative to attack? I can just lead the monsters to sneak around and attack them, and then double team them to eliminate them. What if our guerrillas fail to hold back the enemy? I can also lead a team to sneak attack the enemy's support according to the situation, and surround the point to provide reinforcements to eliminate the enemy's strength. Although the rebels are very poor, they can still afford a civilian walkie-talkie, so Buddy is able to change his response method according to the situation. That is to say, the specific situation will be analyzed in detail, but one point that cannot be avoided is your licker troops. In this case, the success or failure will depend on you. I don't deny this, because this is our only advantage. Buddy frankly admitted that the entire decisive battle plan relied on his own monster troops. But if he could, he wouldn't want to play this role. The man asked again, "Why did the leader suddenly turn into a zombie? Will you do the same? What if you turn into a zombie during the decisive battle and lose control of these monsters?" He wanted to confirm this, but he didn't dare act with an unstable factor in mind. Controlling those lickers will speed up the mutation process, but this is linked to the individual's physical condition. Buddy persuaded, "Chief Ivan has persisted for so long. There is no reason why I just started to control those lickers." Mutations. After letting everyone digest the information, he added, "I know what you are worried about, so I plan to lead those monsters myself from beginning to end. If there is an accident, I will ask them to go directly to the presidential palace. The building launched a suicide attack. Then I'm fine." The man sat down, and someone immediately asked another question. "Buddy, how many biological and chemical weapons does the enemy have? Are your monsters confident of defeating them?" The enemy's biological and chemical weapons will only increase in number. Buddy also didn't know the number of biological and chemical weapons, and said, "But as long as they can get close to those biological and chemical weapons quickly, I think the lickers can easily eliminate each other." While Buddy was preparing for the decisive battle, Leon and others who were resting and waiting received an uninvited guest. "Ada? Why are you here?" Leon was surprised that the person speaking outside the door was actually Ada, who had left before. "I'm here to inform you that President Belikova is not a good person. She also has biological and chemical weapons." The reason why Ada found Leon was not because she made a phone call, but because she saw Leon and the others while scouting outside the presidential palace and happened to come over to say hello. After all, Leon and the others were carrying a stretcher, so only the new recruits of the government army could not find it. Leon replied, I already knew about it. He then talked about his experiences these days, including his being attacked and what happened to Buddy. JD looked at Ada, wondering about her identity, and asked, is she one of your people, too? Bruce didn't give Ada a chance, and answered immediately, she is an investigator of BSA, but she is from the European branch. Ada received the signal from Leon's wink, and after hearing Bruce's words, she realized that the other party was now wearing a BSA vest. She didn't expose it, and went straight to the point, then why did you bring a wounded person here? Leon was also used to the other party not actively saying his purpose, and he said his plan and opinion. Ada listened silently and said, as a BSA person, you actually instigated others to use biological weapons to achieve the means, which is a great rebellion. Using biological weapons to fight biological weapons is indeed a cost-effective approach, but this gives BSA an excuse to use biological weapons legally. Once this hole is opened, it is hard to guarantee that other countries will not follow up, and then biological weapons and the accompanying biological crisis will no longer be controlled. She doesn't believe that human nature can withstand such temptation, so naturally she doesn't think this is a good choice. But this is the best way at the moment. Otherwise, with our current manpower, we can't stop Birykova from continuing to use biological weapons. Leon then told Buddy his request. Ada shook her head. She didn't believe that Buddy, who controlled the power, would choose to give up. But she didn't dwell on it anymore and said, you can explain this to Luo Guang. But since you are also going to attack the presidential palace, our plan here has to change. Leon was surprised, Luo Guang is here too. Shen Mei asked at the same time, what plan? Ada sneered, are you so afraid that Luo Guang will come to trouble you? You don't even ask about the plan. She was talking about the plan, but actually referring to her own next action, that is, her own situation. Ada didn't expect that one day she would be jealous of a man. Leon said, I'm not afraid, but I really hope he comes. Do you believe that if Luo Guang comes, he can rush in and drag Birykova out to fight? His words were naturally exaggerated, but they also fully demonstrated how much he trusted Luo Guang. So powerful, Bruce was full of disbelief, but he did not refute. Ada did not want to hear this name again, so she changed the subject and told Parker about her plan. Finally, she added, that guy is so happy in the arms of a woman, how could he come here to suffer? Leon felt that his mood had deteriorated after the other party mentioned Luo Guang, and said, okay, but your news is also very important to us. If it is true, then the other party is likely to hide in underground safe houses and other places, which our firepower cannot blast open. Ada replied, let's talk about it after the fight. It just so happens that you have a big move to help us attract attention, so leave the underground things to us. Do you need manpower assistance? Leon thought that BSA was only a small team, and it would be a disadvantage to face the tightly defended enemies in the sewers. Ada shook her head and said, I also mentioned this issue, but Captain Parker said it doesn't matter. Their mission this time also includes testing new equipment. It seems that there are several good equipment that can just deal with the situation in the sewer. BSA European branch has the strongest research and development capabilities in weapons and equipment. Leon nodded, okay, I'll contact the rebels to confirm the time and plan of action. Meow, thanks for subscribing and voting me out.